Hello and welcome everyone to the Unified Premier League. It's me, Eric Desirux Beltran. Joining me is the no-nonsense Dean Rebel Fox Merrick. How you doing today, Dean?
Not too bad. It's been a couple of days of Fantastic League Legends that I've had a chance to consume in a number of different avenues, and now we're on to Friday, which means it's time for UPL, time for getting close to the end of the season time, trying for clutch time for some teams to try to make that playoff push.
Unfortunately, we did have a little bit of a reschedule, so the matchup today is going to be Winthrop University. Thank goodness, versus Wildcard Developmental. So a little bit of a fun one to have unfold. Winthrop has been at least dominating this group so far, Dean.
Yeah, you sound real broken up about having to cover Winthrop again. I know, Matt, Bud, and you don't have a particularly great relationship as far as your casting career has gone. But yeah, Winthrop has been perhaps, if not the most dominant team in this group. They've been definitely one of the most dominant teams just inside of the entire tournament as a whole. Last week, they took a really big victory against Harrisburg, which is it's huge for a couple of reasons, not only within the confines of just like UPL in this group, but within like the greater confines of collegiate League of Legends too. So Winthrop just going completely undefeated up until this point has almost set them up for a point where next week they don't even have to care about what they're going to play because they're going to be able to lock it in. If they win this week at a 2-0, there's no chance of Harrisburg catching them because they've got the head-to-head tiebreaker, so they don't have to worry about losing the first seed. So it's up to Wildcard Developmental, who are walking in here as sitting at 2-3, trying to qualify. They're right on the verge of that playoff push to play upset for Winthrop and keep them honest in our final week of play.
I got to say, what a busy team Winthrop is currently. This is the team that is participating in the Proving Grounds, but also the team that's participating in the Collegiate League of Legends Championship as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot on their plate right now as they really dial up the competition and try and get as much practice as they can to perform over in Proving Grounds. But for Wildcard Developmental, this is a roster that a lot of names are much more new to us, much more fresh to us, really building up some new names for talent.
Yeah, even for the beginning of the season, I mean, you talked about they've had two substitutions since then. Earlier on, Yurasan stepped in for, I believe it was DK21 at the ADC position for Wildcard Gaming Developmental. But just this week alone, they had a substitution at the jungle as Krakadon took a step out from Wildcard training. We don't know exactly what the reason was for that, but he was a pretty solid contributor for the majority of the splits to now what is Maniac in the jungle, which is somebody that used to be on the roster. Actually, if you remember back on the time when Wildcard Developmental was actually hosting Anime Girl at the time. Maniac 1v9, I believe, was the full name that was across the place, but Maniac was the jungler at the time, filled for teams like Ping is the Problem. If you remember Ping is the Problem, this was the jungler, and he's stepping in today for Wildcard Developmental once again onto this roster since last year in October when he was playing under the Wildcard banner previously as well. So it's a player that understands the system and kind of understands what Wildcard is all about.
Now, this is week 6 of 7, so we are winding down right now. When it comes to the Group 4, the Cloud Division, which is what's being played right now, Winthrop are already locked in, secured for playoffs, trying to secure that final seed with this game right here. Only one team is completely out of contention for this, and that is not going to be Wildcard Developmental. So they're still in the fight, they're still in the standings to try and secure a playoffs position.
That they are. Their final week of play is also going to be against another collegiate team in North American Dragons, who also today they've got a game ahead of themselves because they've got Harrisburg to play up against. And so both of these two are teams that are competing alongside like University of California, San Diego in an attempt to claim those last couple of spots, because like Last Resistance currently sits at like 3-2. Dragons sitting 3-2 right now. Again, Wildcard Developmental, they sit at 2-3. So there's this like little cluster of teams that are going to be playing against each other and against other top teams just in the last week of competition alone to make sure that they can qualify for those last couple of spots. So not only is it, again, a huge upset to be able to step in here and be the #1 undefeated group here for Wildcard, but it's also almost quintessential to be able to do so because it takes so much pressure off yourself trying to get to playoffs next week.
For Wildcard Developmental going against a squad that is in Proving Grounds, it's a good time to be able to try and get some practice in against some of these upper tier teams that are participating in more of the tier 1s, the upper leagues of North American Amateur. So we do go into the draft so far. Just so far focused into the jungle, both sides. Volibear Eve going to be removed off the map, as well as Akshan.
Yeah, it's a rarity actually to see players that play a lot of Akshan, but it's Onat that plays a ridiculous amount of that for the side of Wildcard Developmental, who, after the substitutions for Maniac in the jungle this week, but also for Yurison previously inside of the split, I have to imagine that Onat has taken a fair amount of just the pure carry potential, because he's the player that I was keeping an eye on from the beginning of the split for Wildcard Developmental, to maybe even step into some of the upper echelons of some of the play that they've got, and maybe even eventually take a spot on the backup squad for Wildcard, not the main roster, but of course the secondary roster that was performing in PG as well. Onat's definitely the player to keep your eye on as the potential move up for that regard, and so that's who I'm keeping, in the forefront of my mind for Wildcard, just to kind of do a bunch of the carrying for themselves. So it's not shocking to get rid of one of the most played champions. It's also very targeted because again, that Evelyn is a big play for Maniac, who's been playing that a lot inside of solo queue and in competitive previously. So not shocking at all to see that one removed off the board.
So Evelyn removed off the board, following up soon after Leona getting down to Way, getting rid of that engage. That could be picked up by Snow. Vex has been working a lot of wonders with the Jinxes of lately, usually in the mid game. It might not be the strongest laning for Vex, but he can position in those mid game fights to really take advantage of that, get excited. Now, first pick going over towards Winthrop.
I have slowly come around to this conclusion, Deserux, that Kai'Sa is currently one of, if not the best B1 champion in the game right now, if you can flex it between mid and AD. I've seen it so many times that if the champion gets on the 3 items, you lose. Because you lose half of your health if you're a squishy to just the W alone, and if you are like a tank or somebody a little bit bulkier and you can't just kill her in a very small combo, you lose the game. It is not fair. So any team that is willing to learn that champion in the mid lane and in the bottom lane, you have a definitive draft advantage over others. We're not getting that here, unfortunately. It's the Lucian, who also stepped back into the mid lane role, I think a little bit inside of this patch, became a lot stronger. I've seen plenty of things about it. Not to the level that I think the Kai'Sa has been, but it's still incredible to flex between the two. And that's why Wildcard, you can see them pulling the Nami off the board. There's no flex for potentially Kenji into the bottom lane to put the Lucian Nami down there, the way it was in a lot of the preseason games that were so dominant.
So Wildcard Developmental already going pretty hard with some of the engage tools that they have. Onslaught of Shadows, Tidal Wave. This would work pretty well if they want to force their positioning into Winthrop. But the thing about Winthrop so far is they are drafting for the early game. They're drafting for the mid game. They're drafting for those spikes that can be competitive for any of those mid game engages that Wildcard Developmental might go for as the Karma gets locked in.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a faster play, which is kind of against what Winthrop oftentimes go for. We consider them a team that plays very heavily for team fights, and so seeing them on more early game stuff, I wonder if it's them venturing out of their wheelhouse, like you said, because they've got so many avenues to work with, and they're not pressed really inside UPL to make a bunch of success. You're talking like, if you want to experiment for Proving Grounds, you want to experiment for Collegiate League of Legends, you want to experiment for playoffs in UPL, now's really the time to do it. So I kind of like that. Not to mention the Karma pick, I think, is humongous for being able to set up either Ivana or Kenji on the bottom side to really be empowered in a game like this. It's a strong champion on this patch, specifically the Karma is, so it's not shocking to see them again try to take some of the things that have been a little bit more powerful as of this patch and start moving them around into new areas.
Viego getting locked in for Winthrop. Speaking of powerful, he has been a quite competent jungler to have, at least in the meta so far. We've been seeing it picked up here and there in Proving Grounds. It is a jungler that has a lot of early game carry potential and can reset the living daylights out of the enemy team. As we do wrap up with the first half, solo lanes yet to be picked on either side.
Yeah, there's some possibility that Winthrop could put the Karma or the Lucian in a solo lane if they really needed to, but nothing is guaranteed quite yet. The interesting bit, though, is, of course, the Jhin-Nami combination. Nami has been locked so heavily to Lucian for probably the last year or so, or last half a season, whenever Lucian got the changes to make the empowered auto attacks a little better when the 2v2, when you get empowered by an enchanter. And ever since then, like, Nami pops up exclusively with Lucian or exclusively with Xayah as a response to a Lucian pick, just to break those two up to the best of their abilities. We don't see it with the Jhin very often, so I'm actually really interested because it's set up that slows down enemy champions and adds additional damage on top of the low number of bullets that you get. It really supplements what a Jhin can do inside the laning phase. It's not enough, I don't think, necessarily to set it up perfectly to straight up 2v2, but it is enough, I think, to really put a lot more damage in and have complete dictation over the laning phase.
If you can land a bubble or a deadly flourish, one CC really sets up the other down there for the bottom lane. So we'll see if Wildcard can bring that together. As the pick for the mid lane, Ari, it's been popping up much more in priority. Going to be locked in for Wildcard Developmental.
I like it as a blind for Onat here. I think it makes quite a bit of sense to be able to actually move the Ari around as an influence on the map, or being able to play into it, I think is really big. And here we see, of course, the possibility is always there for the Lucian Flex now that the new patch is dropped, and we get the Ezreal, which is just Vex's special on the bottom side of the map. That is to assume, of course, that we're not getting any sort of flexing with the Ezreal instead of the Lucian, and one of the two are going anywhere else. But I have to think now Ivana is the one that actually wants his hands on the Lucian. And they go for the blind Kennen here into Dot, looking through carries to the best of their abilities, and I guess they decide that they need more AP and more just AoE teamfight against the side of Wildcard, so they go with the Electric Mouse Pokemon.
I love it. I love it. We always see new things coming out of Mabud. He has historically been that tank player. Now, kind of moving it around into that team fight territory with the Kennen lock-in, but response out of Wildcard Developmental is going to be the Scion D.
In the very early stages of the game, it feels kind of bad as Scion, because you are a bit of a bullet sponge for, I guess, Shuriken sponge, I suppose, for the Electric Mouse on the top side of the map, but eventually it becomes very, very difficult unless the Kennen is snowballing for him to kill the Scion at all. And again, it fits into this massive team composition that Wildcard wants to play for, which is so much of, let's put all of our players together and make sure we're taking 5-on-5s. They do have a problem of damage. I like to say Voschaden, which is German for wear damage, just because, again, RA to me isn't a super hard late game carry, and Jin's got great single target, don't get me wrong, but you still have to be careful about like not being able to full carry a fight effectively as the Jin if you're not set up to do so perfectly. They do have plenty of frontline for it. But the other side, of course, there's plenty of team fighting tools, but like you said, I think you alluded to it perfectly, that in the early game, they've got a lot of hard-hitting solo laning, they've got a good way for Frost Force to just start attacking immediately, and Kenji should help out quite a bit with wave clear on the bottom side of the map, so even the Ezreal starts getting broken out of lane a little bit more than you typically expect it to be.
Yeah, I do, okay, maybe the bias is there, Dean, maybe the bias is there, maybe I gotta calm down a little bit, but I do favor Winthrop a lot so far in their draft, just from the way we've seen them play in the past. You were mentioning that they do come online more around the mid-game. They do tend to have some good early games here and there. I like the enabling that this has by Frost Force being able to play towards those solo lanes to enable them to get that mid-game spike going even earlier. I think so far it's a good answer to what Wildcard Developmental have drafted. I'm not the biggest fan of what Wildcard Developmental are bringing for a team fight, but I do like what they can get if they try and set up for pick more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I feel like this composition for Wildcard, like, Urasan can be the target of affection at the beginning of the game for Maniac, and I think there's a lot of validity to that, but it's difficult to gank the Ezreal Karma lane, and so if you're trying to set somebody up effectively for, like, the long haul, I think Onat is the better player to do that with, especially when you're looking across from what is effectively 5 squishy champions that aren't going to have, like, the most ridiculous amount of magic resist in the world outside of, you know, multiple malls, whatever decisions are made for itemization to try to get magic resist in. But Onat should have quite a bit of onus inside of this game pretty much no matter what, unless he's been dramatically behind. I'm expecting Maniac and even Urasan, Snow, Dot to make influences in the mid lane more than anything, especially with this Lucian pick, which is kind of, again, for 12.5, it's relatively fresh compared to anything else we've really seen inside the mid lane. It's a bit of a new flex for Ivano.
So, with the Proving Grounds going on concurrently right now over on the LCS stream, it's nice that you guys are able to tune in here, because this is where, this is where a lot of it starts for North American Amateur. This is where a lot of careers really start off, and you start looking at the Gamepedia's first tournament you really see on there. Typically, if it's not a collegiate one, it is going to be UPL. For Wildcard Developmental, as we said, there are a lot of new players here who are trying to work into their first year of esports, who are trying to get that growth going for them. And their stories unfold right here in the UPL.
Yeah, there's so many of them that actually get their fresh start inside of UPL. I can remember a time when, like, Tactical first got taken, Hyper would not stop talking about how he was in UPL or a graduate of UPL at the time. Hyper's our producer, of course. Everybody should know that by now. But yeah, I remember him talking about that quite a bit. And every year, it feels like we get a brand new graduate to, what is it, like, either an affiliated team, an academy team, an LCS team, like players like Chime that, like, I remember him in Supernova, and I had to convince people that he was really good, even though Supernova ended up, like, not even getting out of their groups in UPL one year when they were trying to qualify. And I was like, no, this Chime guy is really good. And then, like, he got signed to Golden Guardians, and I'm like, I told you. But this is the same situation over and over again. I know we have plenty of kind of tape on Winthrop, but for a team like Wildcard that has this kind of development structure that we've seen so far, keeping your eye on players that have really solid performances, you could see them take steps to the next level just even in the ensuing split, right? The summer is coming up pretty soon too. Proving Grounds is right now in correct place. Now Urasan is feeling some pretty bad effects of this, and that is a very early kill.
That is an incredible level, too. The moment they knew they were going to get that minion kill well ahead of time, the flash, very early out of Sir Kenji, securing it.
Yeah, actually, props to Sir Kenji being able to kind of operate on that quick of a decision, because it really was only one minion that Urasan needed until he was really necessary to actually get aggressive against. Here, we're getting shenanigans. This is Winthrop. We talked about, this is Winthrop with a different light, right? This is angry Winthrop. This is...
it might be a Winthrop that gets
Frostforce wins.
He's still very healthy. He's going to be fine. Yeah, I mean, you can't really bring too much with Dot on the Scion. He doesn't have too much in terms of damage, so Frostforce, he just walks out.
Yeah, went for the full blue buff there and actually walked right into the opposing jungle. Frostforce grabs up the red, and that's going to put Hecarim on a pretty bad back foot because, number one, you don't have a red buff, but also you lose a fair amount of experience off that first clear. Now Snow's going to take some additional damage. You see how easy it is for these two. Oh my goodness, just gliding on the bottom side right now.
Urasan barely able to get away from that snare, so he does get some retaliation in for the harassment, but Vex and Sir Kenji are constantly pressing the momentum here. They're constantly pressing the go button to punish out this Jin Nami lane.
It's a bad situation to be in. You definitely don't want to let this Ezreal and this Karma continue to snowball, because Karma is such a powerful champion to start the lane off. It's really difficult to recover. There's Ivana with some solid trading into Onat. Ignite went down. Ooh, forces cleanse. Actually, both sides taking a little bit of a hit, but no flashes burnt on either side, so it is just the supplementary summoner spells.
Luckily for Ivano, Maniac, who is the jungler, by the way, for the side of Wildcard Developmental. Don't let that name fool you. Sometimes we get a little placeholder names here and there. Maniac, nowhere near the mid lane. It is a strategy we've seen work against Winthrop in the past, which is camp onto Ivano, try and punish him whenever he does overextend. It's worked to mixed success because we have seen Winthrop also play towards that strategy and go for a counter gank method. So far, not going to be the case for Maniac's jungle.
Not at all. And again, I want to jump back to Kai'Sa really quick because I was very excited for specifically Ivano to get his hands on that champion, because Ivano first made a splash when he was playing Vex, and Kai'Sa with the current build on 3 items kind of feels like if Vex's ultimate just had like a 3-second cooldown when you hit people with it, which is just not fair. And it still allows Ivano to go diving into the enemy team, which is, it's kind of insane to think just how much impact Ivano could have on a champion like that. And we've seen even like Doxa was able to pick it up. That's an alumni of Winthrop. You have to think that like that's an available like resource potentially for them to be able to open up a book for. So I do hope they pick it up eventually. But the Lucian does again, it does something that's very different for Winthrop, which is open up the mid lane very quickly in a winning situation for them to attack the map quickly with, which is something that Frostforce likes to do. But oftentimes you're not going to see Vex and Sir Kenji get very aggressive. You're not going to see Mappa go for like very early solo kills. You'll oftentimes see the team again to play more for the 5-on-5 type fight. So this game has been a bit of an enigma to start things off, because again, they're working off the back that Ivano is going to have permanent push, and they're going for things like invades and very quick duels up against the enemy team.
So where do you think Wildcard Developmental are going to play to now? You do see Snow trying to get out of lane after getting that last recall. Not going to find too much, just head back to the bottom lane. Maniac needs a lane to play off of. It's kind of difficult to play over towards this top lane until, at least until Dot's able to get his ultimate, so you can get that crowd control to lock down Mudbud long enough. But even then, it's still quite the gamble with the slicing Maelstrom. If you do set up a dive, he can stun you up there indefinitely. The only lanes I can really see for Wildcard Developmental would be the mid lane and the bottom lane. What are you too much seeing on this?
I personally, again, having walked into a game like this, I have a lot of faith that Ari would have quite a bit of impact, as well as Onat being, to me, again, the crux of this composition and the crux player of what this team is actually built around. And I think Onat is the best prospect that sits on this roster to be moved to the next level for any team, not even just Wildcard. And so I would like to see what happens when they put resources into him, because I haven't seen too much like game tape on this team. You don't always get a bunch of VODs and stuff to work with. And so I want to see what Onat looks like if they start ganking him very quick. If they try try to get a kill or two into the Ari and see what happens when it gets broken out. Because not only do I believe that it's necessary to kind of get a full scouting report on Onat to see what we really are working with in terms of capability to move to the next level, but also I want to see what his carry potential looks like in that regard.
Trying to put it on display right now, coming in with the invade. Winthrop able to dodge away from the charm of Onat, but securing the blue buff will be wildcard developmental. Maniac will grab that one, so Winthrop coming out empty-handed.
But they continue to make these aggressive kind of, first move type map attacks, which is quite nice for Winthrop, because again, it's a little bit of a different look compared to what we normally get from them. So good on them being able to kind of flex strategy at least a little bit. Again, it's something to watch to see if they'll pick up for anything else in the coming future that they're going to be playing for.
Right, Maniac is trying to play towards the bottom lane right now. He was spotted out by, I believe, a Scuttle or a Ward. Either or. So not going for the play in the bot lane, but Winthrop's bot lane, they're going to keep pressing. They're going to keep trying this harassment. They have no problem with it. They're not really getting punished by it. Yersan and Snow are just hiding underneath their tower.
It's kind of crazy that Kenji hasn't even bought boots yet, because I feel as soon as the tier 2 boots come out, that W is just a death sentence onto either one of them without burning a flash. Because that just worked against Nami, who had boots and still had to burn the flash, and now Frost Force comes into bottom side as well to continue the pushing power. This is going to prevent them from playing the game at all. The Jhin is basically completely dead in the water at the moment. There's not much that the Nami's going to be able to do either.
So there was a route of attack, but Kenji, with the flash over the wall, perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. Now Maniac trying to find a new target in the mid lane will be Ivano. Coming in with the charge, can't get close enough to Ivano, who flashes over the wall, sidesteps the onslaught of shadows. Now has to get away from Snow, and Maniac can't do that. Snow will take him down.
Yeah, easy enough to be able to snag that one away. I do want to give a little bit of kind of criticism, I guess, to Onat, because again, you walked in with no mana up against the Lucian in an attempt to put some damage into him. Maybe that was necessary for the bait, maybe it wasn't, but what you do know is that Ivana would have had to flash to get out of the situation, whether Maniac showed up there after the play came through from Onat or not. So I think that just, I don't know where communication broke down right there. It was, however, nice to see that, the roam up from Nami was necessary for the supplementation of Maniac's aggression against Ivano any further than what it had been. Burning that flash in the mid lane is pretty big, because that sets up Onat, I think, for future endeavors, especially with the ultimates up, because it's a lot easier to get out of ganks and stuff when you're Ari. Although Frost Forest, rude. Again, just stepping rude, yeah, just stepping into the other jungle. Nobody's allowed to be here except for Frost Forest.
Yeah, they own the place. This is very Winthrop dominated. Even with the kill scores being as low as they are, it's just been control of the map going so handily over to Winthrop. A lot of this coming from the bot lane. Sir Kenji has been an aggressive beast towards punishing Yersan and Snow, now transferring that towards the top side. I hate it when Dot has to run away with the Scion, all just saying cowards while running away from the support Karma, but that is the state that Winthrop had this game. Ooh, a Charm comes out into the mid lane, gonna catch Ivano, who gets flipped by the Orb of Deception, pops the Culling, gets a good amount of damage onto Onat. Snow is there to provide some backup. Ivano gonna be okay.
Yeah, the most important thing here is that Onat was competing alongside Snow in an attempt to get a kill onto Ivano, and if that works, there's a chance they can go up and try to poke into the river, because Kennen isn't quite there, and so they would have had a 2v2 in the jungle and the support matchups. That might have been okay, but because they don't win that, because Ivano just survives it without even having the summoner spells available just by popping the ultimate, it means that there's no path for Snow to get in, there's no path for Onat really to leave the laning phase, and so at best you are getting a 3v2 now in the river, and you're just never going to be able to take that. Snow, that was a little cheeky. He gets the big Krug over from Vax. Now they're going to find Maniac, though!
Oh, brutal. They just take him down in the blink of an eye, in a heartbeat. It's not his game. He's not allowed to be on the Rift. He's not allowed to counter jungle. God forbid if you do, because Winthrop will hunt you down.
Winthrop's doing a great job at just playing this very high aggression style to begin with. Not only are they stepping into the opposing jungle just to look for as much as they can, but they're also preventing any aggressive movements coming out from Wildcard.
Right, Deadly Flourish locking down Sir Kenji, getting the kill on Sir Kenji. Now Frost taking this 2v1, starting to back off, but the True Shot Barrage lands flush. Now it's Frost Forest versus Yersan. Only Vex trying to sweep it up, will not get there in time. A double kill goes over to Frost Forest.
Now they have the ability to auto down this tower. They actually don't know where it is that the Hecarim's at. They've got 2 wards there, which is a little shocking to me that they're playing this so defensively, but they have no mid-interior ward. I guess they were worried that maybe Rift Herald would, or that Hecarim would rush right down river, but it looks like they actually are faithful that that's not going to be the case. So instead, they drop the Rift Herald. They're going to give solo turret gold, or at least a half turret gold, to Vex on the bottom side, the other half to Frost Force, because he's the one that dropped it, which is a huge amount of gold, and it 2 your biggest carries to begin the game here for the side of Winthrop, who have been succeeding immensely. Just getting run down, but Maniac's got no chance here.
Maniac, don't try that one. You're a 2-level deficit. This is a Fed. Ezreal goes down. Dragon getting picked up over on the side of Winthrop after a 1-for-1 exchange. Savano falls in the mid. There's the Slicing Maelstrom being used. Gonna block out the slam of the axe. My bud looking to put the final nail in, but Dot puts it in faster and gets the 1v1.
Feels bad, man. Right there, Dot. Oh, no!
He's just CSing, bro. He's just CSing.
He's just
clearing the wave.
He needed a faster back, bro. Faster back. That feels pretty bad on both sides, because the first off, Mabud was only like 1 auto attack off of just killing Dot, and he had stopped 2 full like Qs from coming out from Dot that would have won the 1v1, but couldn't stop the 3rd one, and it's a bit more damage that's actually come out from Dot, so maybe not expecting that much to come through in just like the initial combos. Dot, the tower shot though, must have thought that it wasn't going to do enough damage since he had like 200 air health up or something like that, and it just barely brought him down long enough, and it was right after the duel. So unfortunately, top lane is just trading guys. Maybe they're getting bored because at that point there's no kill participation, so they were just like, we gotta do something in this game, right?
Can't be left on that island forever. Well, interesting trade over on the top side. Vex, he sees a horse. The pony thinks it's the carousel, wants to hop on the ride as well. It's a bag of money instead. 3-0-2 is Vex as he takes down Maniac.
Homie's getting commissions from the glue factory at this point. He's just hunting down Maniac again and again with this Ezreal pick. He's on 2 completed items, and there's not even a completed item or a completed pair of boots for Maniac in this game. It's incredible just how powerful that Vex is in a game like this. And now all of a sudden you get interior of the map with the Ezreal, who's going to be able to kind of siege up on the mid-outer tower, which is huge for being able to take map priority. It opens up a lot more space for Kenji to roam up or down to make an effect against Dot or against Onat, which is, I think, really big as well. It's really difficult to see what Wildcard have the ability to do in a game like this when they can just lose so much on both their sides to both Frost Force and Kenji.
Yep, there's Frost Force from a bud. Was in a little bit of danger, but Frost Force was there to completely flip that one onto its head, and now Winthrop focusing over towards this topside tower. The rest of Wildcard Developmental are on the bottom side of the map. It's still going to be a while before Dragon does spawn, so even though they have all this forward vision, they have to keep it strong for a bit. Aggression being played in the mid lane. Step to the side. Vex, beautiful with that arcane shift, but here comes some attack from Maniac. Gonna miss the final bullet. Gotta be careful. Vex is healthy. Wouldn't mind jumping on and picking up another kill. Onat waiting in the wings. Out comes the true shot barrage. Caught by the charm. Vex runs low. Balls to the ground. Onslaught of Shadows over the wall, but Ivana was able to grab the kill. Still shut down going over to Yurson. Wildcard Developmental. They got some agency here in the mid lane.
Yeah, found a little bit of a play. First off, getting at least 1 bring down onto Kenji, and then being able to use those pick tools like you talked about to find a second one. There's going to be a re-engagement from Frost Force and Ivana, though.
Looking to go for it. Here comes the teleport, my bud. He wants to bring in the Slicing Maelstrom. He has the flash. Can he get in range? The answer is yes. Only going to find 1, though, as Dot holds the defensive line. Yurson and Snow barely get out.
They do stop the mid-turret from going down, which I think is a pretty big thing, and they themselves get this tempo of, like, okay, you were in a fight for too long, you lost too much health on the back end, you can't re-engage into the 3 members, especially with the respawns coming in, and now that means mid-tower goes down as well, so it just gets the old Uno reverse card played on a wild card, because they overload on mid, they themselves get overloaded on mid after having lost all of their resources and health bars, and it leads to a position now where, again, Vex is going to be able to shove out mid over and over again. Your Ezreal is now going to join the attack alongside Kenji and Frost Force into the side lanes, and they control everything. They haven't lost a neutral objective yet when it comes to like anything that's on the board. Rift Herald spawning in a minute, Dragon's going to be spawning in a minute, something like that, and there's nothing that stops them from moving all of their pieces into those areas, and especially with how strong they are in this game, it is going to be near impossible for Wildcard to really say anything about it.
Rebel, how do you feel about this one from Maniac right now? Still going for the Trinity Force. I feel like with how bullied he's been, he's got to go with tank build. He's just got to be the engager. Ooh, Onat picked out in his own jungle. Sir Kenji grabbing that kill. But yeah, this build is going to afford him no survivability. I feel like Vex is just going to continue hopping on him.
Not to mention, like if you're going for something like this, I think it's usually I prefer it when you have something that you're fighting against. So it's like, okay, if you've got another like bruisery type on the other side, like if the Scion were the other side, I would be like, okay, if you're fighting up against the Scion, it makes sense to have Trinity Force because it takes a second to like ramp up. Your Q's gonna do more damage, your auto's gonna do more damage. In this game, who is it really for? Like, who are you dueling with? Because you're losing every consistent battle against Frost Force, Ivano, and Vex. And Mabud, you're either bursting or he's stunning you, and then there's nothing for you to do with the Trinity Force. To me, if you're going to go damage, you definitely go Sunderer, but you shouldn't go to Sunderer. You're 100% right. It should be the tank in this one because it's cheaper and it's more effective for what you're trying to accomplish in a game like this. But maybe, again, I talked about how there was very low damage on this team, like, barring, like, the Ari going very well, and maybe in this game, like, Maniac just sees it as he needs to be more damaged.
Onat lands a charm onto Sir Kenji. Over the wall comes Ivano. Onslaught of Shadows gets flash, but Sir Kenji will survive. Same not said for Ivano. Sir Kenji finally getting hammered down. Maniac finds an inside track. Suddenly the whole bottom side of the map is taken down. Winthrop lose a fight. Wildcard gain an objective bounty and a Drake.
Interesting decisions coming out from Winthrop right there. Mostly because it felt like they wanted to go for a full-on engagement, but they couldn't quite get everybody on the same page to attack at the exact same time. And so it ends up costing them quite a bit because, again, they low-key kind of stormtrooper through a fight. Ivano started on the back and did a good amount of damage, and then like Kenji and Vex got split up a little bit on the front line, ended up getting ulted by Dot on the back, which caused a lot of problems, and nobody could really come in together. And it was off the back of, again, what should be a setup that works really heavily in their favor. This is something else.
Oh, going alone here. It's a 3-on-1, 4-on-1. That's I don't know. If this was the gym, we'd call that an ego lift. That was very strange coming out from Frost Forest there. Savano comes in, a little bit bitter about seeing his jungler fall.
So I think that Frost Forest thought he was getting chased. I don't think they were chasing him. I could be wrong about that. It looked like they weren't really like doing anything in the topside jungle with any agency, and that Frost Forest instead just kind of like, he thought that people were chasing him, and then he's like, alright, I gotta do something to stop these people from chasing me, and then he jumped out of vision, and Onat's like, oh, hey, what's this guy doing here? And like, that's just what happened. And again, it's another mistake from Winthrop that it's not it's closing the gold lead. It's not closing it very fast, but obviously, like, they've given up a dragon now. Their gold lead could have been, it was at 7,000. It's a little bit smaller than 7,000 now, sitting closer to 5,500. It's just, it's not the cleanest mid game that we've seen from Winthrop for all time, especially given the advantage they've had at the beginning of the game. I'm not against them. They're still doing fantastic in a game like this, but again, Wildcard are finding ways to put all of their current players together and to be able to punish mistakes that Winthrop are making, which is, again, doing this too many times will eventually yield good information for Wildcard, even though I still think if they tie the gold, it doesn't matter, because the gold is there for Winthrop to win the game anyway.
You're kind of seeing a bit of catch-up being played by Wildcard Developmental. I believe it was 16 minutes that the Gale Force went down for Yerson. Now has his rapid-fire cannon complete. Picking up a lot of these objective bounties, a lot of these stray kills is helping Wildcard Developmental get back into this. You saw in the bot lane the Hullbreaker doing some work for Dot, who was able to take that bot lane tower. Wildcard need to be a little bit considerate about what's going on right now. You know, you don't want to play with your food too much.
You do not. You have to continue to try to capitalize on mistakes that are being made from Winthrop when the time comes. Winthrop not giving them a ton of avenues to actually generate their own plays, though. When that happens, I think it's really difficult, because if you start attacking into a Kennen, into a Lucian, into an Ezreal, they can all kite back really effectively, and they've got big ways to kind of deny things from happening. So it's difficult one way or another for Wildcard to really pull out a game like this unless there are, again, some of those really massive mistakes that come through for Winthrop, especially around a Baron buff, which is why I'm convinced Winthrop is actually better off just not touching the Baron buff until like they just get a big fight win. Oh, Nat, you're nuts. Okay.
Okay. Just 1v1, mid laners going at it.
All right.
Ivano thinking he's going to get the better of that, but every time, Onat's been really, really patient with these charms in the 1v1s.
Yeah, I have to give big props for Onat being able to outposition the culling coming through, also using the charm, like you said, in very effective ways. Where right there, Ivano actually had made the call that the cleanse wasn't necessary to be continue throwing auto attacks in, and maybe one or two auto attacks that were crits might have made the big difference between Onat dying and Onat getting a solo kill against Ivano right there, but we've ended up in this situation. Shirley is stopped just outside the mid-inner or the mid-inhibitor tower for Wildcard Developmental. They actually might be able to stop it. The next wave isn't here yet, and let's see. Yeah, Yarsan stops it before it gets a charge up.
So Shelly going down just shy of that inhibitor tower, as you said. For the most part, Winthrop have just been playing towards this top side, playing towards this Baron side. They've kind of left the bottom wave state to just go whatever way Dot was able to put it earlier in the state of the game. Now the transfer coming out as Dot is going to be placed towards this top side. Dragon is spawning soon, so Wildcard Developmental now putting the bulk of their roster towards Dragon side.
Not to mention, especially with the Hull Breaker on Dot, that means that like you can set up your wave to go pushing for towers and try to claim some additional objective bounties if they want to try to get gold into their back pockets. But here it actually looks like they're wanting to contest for Dragon in 30 seconds, and so Dot just leaves the wave. I think you should have slow pushed it. I think that would have been an ideal situation for Dot, because worst case scenario, you go back topside, you use that Hull Breaker on the stacked wave, and you definitely take that top tower, because right now it's just frozen outside your own, and it's probably going to stay there no matter what the situation is. And all you've really done is you've moved Scion quickly to make sure that he's there for the rest of the team. But given that Onat's been poked out, there's just no way really to accomplish anything here. So they're going to have to give up the third drag into the game to the side of Winthrop. And again, I want to see them push for topside now then, because they haven't lost all that much time. The Dragon still has yet to spawn. It only just now spawned in the seconds. And so with the Hull Breaker, it's possible Dot's going to be able to go snag that top tower, especially if he's got the hover of Maniac in the jungle.
Maniac hovering over there, as you said, and an objective bounty just waiting to be picked up with that Hull Breaker. You still have a outer tower available in the mid lane as well, so Wildcard Developmental can cash in on quite a bit. The gold lead is not too massive, unless they catch you out as Mabud goes for the Slicing Maelstrom trying to lock down Yurson, but Yurson slips back and gets Mabud to the ground. Now the counter engage coming in from Wildcard Developmental. Onat able to block away with the Spirit Rush away from Vex. But there's the trade right there. One picked up on the side of Wildcard Developmental, as well as a tower for Wildcard Developmental.
Yeah, Wildcard Developmental, again, I think utilizing some of the pick tools that you highlighted in the beginning of the game to really kind of turn their favor. That's a very good ultimate coming out from Dot just to make sure he wasn't going to fall behind. And again, so many members actually shifting up. Look at how many members are actually went to topside right there for Winthrop to try to punish that to the best of their abilities. They give up mid-outer tower and another objective bounty over to the side of Wildcard Developmental for free.
And that was 2 consecutive objective bounties. One picked up on the top side, one picked up on the mid side. Just shortly before that, you had Dot on the bottom side who was able to grab the one out, the Charm of the Wall, looking to grab Sir Kenji, picking it up so easy. Winthrop are slipping as we head towards the 25-minute mark.
Again, mechanically, I don't think it's impossible to say the fact that Winthrop has just been superior inside of laning phase and inside of a lot of different situations, but they really have not played the cleanest League of Legends we've ever seen them actually commit a lot of the time. We've seen them make some boneheaded mistakes in the past in a lot of the other tournaments they've been in, be it collegiate, be it proving grounds, whatever the situation may be. I remember the famous Rift Herald that kind of caught them off guard in, what was it, Game 4 of the second Open Qualifier, something like that. That was a great video. But here, it's just consistently they're finding themselves, picked off by like a charm, picked off by a bubble. They're finding themselves in a bad situation to take a fight. They're like not communicating that they all want to fight together. So they've got the gold in the right place. Like, this is nearly a 4-item Ezreal. This is a 3-item Lucian. Like, they're feeling great about where they're at. The penetration on this Kennen is humongous, that if he gets into this whole bulk of members here on the side of Wildcard, he will do enough damage to win a fight. But none of it has been able to come to fruition the way that they wanted to, the way that they probably have intended this to.
Ooh, the fight against Vex. Vex flashes away from Yurson, gets caught by the Deadly Flourish, opening up the curtains. Sir Kenji looking to block. Will Yurson be able to leave it? He doesn't need to! He'll take Kenji! Now Winthrop rushing down this Baron. Onat only figuring out it's happening, but the dinner bell has been rung. Going after Frost Forest. Decimating smash, sending him to the grave. Mabud on the flank as Maniac looks to find a way in. Has the onslaught of shadows, can re-engage. The Baron picked up by Winthrop. It's going to cost their jungler. It's going to cost their support.
It's their situation where, again, Winthrop, I was a little bit kind of hesitant to say, hey, go for a Baron buff, even though you've got really good members to be able to take it, for exactly this reason, which is that their setups have not been looking good. Here they actually use a Lapse in Vision to collapse quite a bit better. Wow, Mabud!
Ooh, final auto was not enough to take him down. Not much magic resist on Maniac there. Mabud able to punish that, but Hey, if you're going against Dot, he's incredibly tanky. He was the one taking down those turrets earlier, so going to be much more trouble to break him down.
He was. Now, the benefit here, of course, Winthrop did lose multiple members off the back of that Baron buff play, but they did still snag up the Baron buff. And again, oftentimes like this, when you have to break apart your team or you have to force into one situation, I don't think you're taking a 5-on-5 most of the time now as Winthrop. You're just worried about pushing your side lanes. And so the important part is that mid lane gets shoved out and bot lane gets shoved out. I love that Mad Bud's on bot side to prepare for that, because the Dragon is what you're really looking for. Dragon Soul's on the back pocket. That's the win condition they're looking to operate on. And they're trying to get some setup. They've got a minute until it's ready, which means that this Vision is in prime position to catch wild card as they try to step into their own jungle, push back the opposing Vision, and get settled into the river. And if they don't do that, if they aren't ready for something like that, they have to be ready on the defense for the base, because the inhibitor's going to be aggressive against.
Going for an engage. Wildcard Developmental, not going to find it. Throwing out that final call of the curtain. A little bit of chip damage on the Dot. You should expect Winthrop to pull off quite soon. Maybe after they grab this inhibitor tower, maybe if they get enough poke, they'll just go for an engage. As Dot has gotten low. It's the front line low for Wildcard Developmental. They're chipping away at this tower. They're going to be able to get this tower. The calling goes out. Hourglass going to be used out of ONAT, but Vex is there and waiting. Inhibitor down. Dinner bell rung. Jumping back in will be Dot. He'll pick up one. Ivano falls. Looking for more as Wildcard Developmental as Vex is able to hop away. Another one going to get dropped. Dot going into the zombie mode. Wants to find Sir Kenji, but down comes the slam of Frost Forest. Buys Kenji time after that. Deadly Flourish. Maniac will fall. Frost Forest hunting him down. Now going to use the charge of his own. It's going to be a 3-man siege coming out from Winthrop as they're going to try and close this one out, but the health bars are starting to get low for Winthrop. Will Wildcard be able to punish? Waiting for that fourth shot. Lands on the Kenji. 200 health left for Kenji. Frost Forest takes another one. Out comes the Mystic Shot. Yurson looking for Vex. Kenji over the wall, trying to play it safe. Another shot comes in. Kenji's caught. Kenji drops. Snow gets it. Frost Forest looking for Yurson. Winthrop biting off more than they can chew, staying for longer than they should. The Dragon still available. That was a bit of a misstep coming out of Winthrop. They still get the inhibitor, but they lost so many members of their squad. Wildcard Developmental, they're trying to respond for this Drake.
I don't think they can actually get to the Dragon in time, and because Frost Force is still up, they should be able to snag it with relative ease unless they yield. Immediately Maniac is out there, but Maniac's not going to get there in time. So eventually Winthrop does end up with a prize that was set for them at the beginning of the game. It was kind of astonishing because Winthrop had set up a pretty solid siege. They dropped a lot of the health off of members that were important from Wildcard, and the pick on ONAT, I think, is what really prompted them to stick around for far too long. Once they got the inhibitor tower, they're really winning the situation because you can go get the soul. Hang out here for a second. I don't know who hit that blast code, but somebody was trolling Maniac right there. I don't know if it was Maniac or whether it was Frost Force, but somebody just ruined that little engage that could have come through.
And I want to mention, leaning into that, if it was going to be a dragon fight, if Winthrop had pulled off after that tower, so many flashes were down for Wildcard Developmental. It was a really positive game state for Winthrop.
For the fact that somehow Wildcard were able to find a favorable looking fight around the bottom inhibitor that ended up with them not losing the game was pretty impressive after losing the mid laner here.
And now you're starting to see that tankiness come online. Out comes the Slicing Maelstrom. It's only landing onto Maniac. Ivano able to call him down, but my bud falls to ONAT in the process. Vex hopping away, gets clipped by Yurson, has to respect that damage of the Jhin. Now split is Winthrop as they're trying to get together, trying to find the Mystic Shots. A good clip onto Yurson. Can Vex finish him off? He does. He gets the shutdown, but it's a trade. Marksman for marksman. Frost Force on the back line. Decimating Smash gonna knock him up as Ivano jumps in with the Lucian, trying to put in the autos, trying to put in the work, trying to put in the shots. Frost will be the one to jump onto the back line and get the resets. Sir Kenji walking away from the zombie mode, but the damage has been done. Winthrop looking to get a little bit more. The bubble comes out, but Winthrop have already won as they start marching into the base of Wildcard Developmental.
And you can see it's a very rare situation where I'm like, okay, what really happened there in the trade-off of ADC for ADC, the Ezreal for the Jhin is usually favorable actually for the Jhin because Ezreal is such a valuable piece of the tool. But Wildcard Developmental have nothing beyond the Jhin for consistent damage. It's just the Ari who isn't that powerful. And because of that, the fight win goes over to Winthrop because they've got consistent damage stealers. This is a last-ditch effort and attempt to save their Nexus.
A desperation attempt. Maniac falls. So will Ivano. Now Yurson getting a couple shots in. The Nexus not really hurt right now. Out, opening the curtain call. Another shutdown. Snow still alive. Running right through my bud. It's disaster! Winthrop are unable to close, and Wildcard Developmental, they're going to get another flow of cash and another chance to try and best this game.
No. We're going to go to Elder territory.
Oh.
This is Flip City. This is not okay. This is how flapjacks are made. I don't appreciate this. Wildcard have made this game way too hard for Winthrop to win again and again. They have bent and not broken to the pressure that's been put onto them. Vex is going to try to solo the Baron here for a little bit, but I don't think he's got lifesteal. I don't think he can take this on his own.
Can't take it on his own. So not going to be able to grab that. And if he was trying that much longer, would have been spotted out. You can see the Hex Gates there. Big worries if Vex were to go down in this state. Would remind me of the whole TSM Sven meme back from Old Worlds.
It's a good one. Oh, what a position we find ourselves in, because it feels like Winthrop has gotten so goosey-goosey in a game like this. Oh,
no. What is going to go on? What is going on right here? Onat. Respect, he's trying to be the hero, catching out Vex. Yeah. We said it would have been huge, but it's done. It's dusted. Winthrop march into victory.
It's going to require some real heroics coming out to try to save this one this time. We saw this before. It did happen around the bottom inhibitor with only actually down, but... Ooh.
No way. You got to be kidding me. Okay. First Maniac falls. Good. Now it's a 3v5. Only Ivano's low. True Shot Barrage comes out, lands onto Snow. No. Frost Force is just going to go in. He's going to make sure. He'll do it himself. Dot survives, but the Nexus is exposed, and there's no minions around that aren't the enemy ones. Open up the curtain call. Vex is going to fall. Come on, Winthrop. Why you got to pat the KDA? You want another piece of it? Your son is going to try and give them the whole damn meal as he chases them right back out. So Winthrop just focused down the Nexus. Winthrop taking game 1 of the series.
For the fact that Winthrop was up like 6,000 gold at only like 3 or 4 minutes, or like 8, 9, 10 minutes into the game, that was way too stressful. I don't like when games like this come through. Because Winthrop, they should have been winning this game from top to bottom. This should have been like a 22-minute sweep where they got like the first Baron buff and that was it. But man, Wildcard really made it competitive in a lot of different ways. Their composition was good for team fighting. They have kept finding and baiting for team fights. Their pick tools were being used efficiently. I think that's got to be the most damage a Na'Vi has probably ever supplied to a team with Imperial Mandate I've ever seen in my entire life. But ultimately, again, late game team fighting and eventually experience just win out the day for Winthrop when they've got the advantages like they do in that game.
And I believe this is a lot of experimentation coming out from Winthrop trying to prepare for Proving Grounds. Because I'm looking through the match histories right now. I'm looking through Mabud's record. This is the first time he's played Kennen. At least on competitive history, he's played Kennen. So, it didn't work out that well, but Winthrop, it's good that they try these things out now as they get ready for the next bit of competition coming up. But we're going to take a moment to get ready for the next game between these two squads. So we're going to throw it a short break. When we return, we'll get into game number 2 of Winthrop versus Wildcard Developmental. Welcome back, everyone, to the Unified Premier League. Eric Desrex Patron, the no-nonsense team, Rebel Fox American. We're getting ready for game number 2, but an interesting game number 1. What was domination kind of came down to Winthrop toying with their food and Wildcard Developmental almost finding a way back in off that hubris.
It really was, which feels, I don't even know how to feel about it, whether or not, because I know Winthrop knows how to close games like that. Maybe it's, again, like you said, I think toying with your food is the best way to go about it. And now they realize, okay, Wildcard Developmental, maybe we don't play with our food. Maybe we just kind of, eat it like a human being this time instead of anything like that. It would be nice to see Wildcard come out with some kind of a strategy that did help out in the beginning of the game, because that was the thing that kind of shot them in the foot. Was the beginning of the game really fell completely to pieces around them far too quickly for them to be able to recover.
All right. On a side note, I just want to say that is one of the most bloodthirsty Nami KDAs I've seen in a while. 7-11 at the end of this game for Snow. Accidentally kill stealing a lot of those, but it's a lot of damage that you get on the tidal wave bubble combo. Really, it happens, right?
Yeah, not to mention, again, the number of times where I'm pretty sure it was the Imperial Mandate that did a good amount of the damage that ended up chunking somebody out to kill was, it was kind of crazy. I can give some props because, again, taking away that Nami was just to really make sure that there was no chance that Vex was going to get a chance with that in the bottom side with Kenji, who've been working on that combination inside of Collegiate League of Legends. So that's some solid scouting coming out from Wildcard Developmental as well. So props to them for being able to accomplish that feat as well. Sneezes knows what he's doing when it comes to picking out things for the side of Winthrop. And now they find themselves on the blue side. Again, my Kaisa, where's my Kaisa? I really hope somebody's able to pick it up, because that is a filthy champion that is way too good to be left up like that.
Nope, I already see it. No, oh, okay, maybe. Just ban away the Volibear, let Rebel have the Kaisa. I actually really want to see this champion as well.
Yes.
Now that we have... Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, have you played ARAMs anytime in like the last year when she switched to being recommended to AP?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You know how insufferable she is in ARAMs?
I absolutely, especially if you land the missile, it resets.
It like
the
resets.
cooldown.
Yeah, that.
And then you're just forced to eat that over and over and over.
Yeah, somebody let that bleed into Summoner's Rift, where it's like, okay, you know how Kai'Sa just has 0 weaknesses when she can press a W and kill anyone with like 2 Ws? Yeah, that's just what Kai'Sa is now. It just takes a little longer to get there, unfortunately.
We had seen it earlier. I think Sligo did it to get back in the Proving Grounds not too long ago. It was just nasty. All it took was 1 missile, 1 Killer Instinct, 1 Acathian Rain. Not even that far ahead was that Kai'Sa, but
nope.
Yeah, that's what happens when she gets online. As we start looking at the champion select of this game here and now, Tryndamere banned away. My bud not going to be able to play that one. He's been going on a tear with that Tryndamere anytime he gets it. As well as the typical Evelyn ban, Volibear taken away as well.
Making sure not to let Maniac get that one in his back pocket. Looked a little uncomfortable in the previous game. The Hecarim wasn't like horrid as the game went a little bit further, but again, the early game just was not there. And so I'm hoping they can get a little bit more comfort for Maniac in a game like this. Akshan also getting taken away from Onat. I'm hoping they find something for Onat that the Ari was good, but again, it didn't get off the ground quite quick enough for them to really kind of use it at the beginning of the game. So again, I'm looking more for champions that shift into more early game power so they can combat what Winthrop has been using against them.
So now that we have wildcard developmental on the blue side, what is going to be the priority for this one? Taking a look at what happened last time, the bans are going relatively similar. Wildcard developmental are going to take away the Lucian. I did like what we saw out of Onat when he was able to get out of lane, but I really enjoyed the bottom lane of wildcard developmental. Yursan, as he got later onto that Jhin, he was able to get in some pretty good pop shots, and his the shots he got with the curtain call as well, full healthing one of those kills was pretty nasty.
I kind of expect Jinx here with the Lucian ban, because I'm pretty sure this is the response that Vex was having, was taking the Lucian into the Jinx. I'm actually sure it's probably pretty solid in the Zeri as well, so either of those two, if you happen to be stuck on like the 12-14 type meta for the side of wildcard, there's punishment to come out. Again, we're getting toyed with. I know I'm always getting toyed with inside a draft like this, but yeah, I never expect any of the champions I talk about to get selected. So,
I do like this for Maniac though. It's a little bit easier to execute. It's a much safer jungler to have.
It's also got like I think quite a bit more frontline capability. You don't like, even if it builds a Triforce, just pressing the ultimate in the midst of a fight really does break up quite a bit of what like the damage is from the side of Winthrop, especially when Vex likes to play safer further back carries. It basically means the Xin Zhao is going to be immune to Vex's damage, so then it's up to whoever else is in the place, whether it's Mabud, whether it's Ivano, who's able to do that damage, or Frost Force on like Viego, something like that. Somebody else is going to have to put damage into Maniac as of this game, and it competes with a lot of things in incredible ways. Frost Force is unlikely to be somebody that goes for the Trundle, unless it's like Storm Razor, which would be awesome, but I don't think that's Frost Force's forte, so instead just goes towards the Hecarim. Pairs it with the Karma, which is a really big combination for team fights and being able to aggress very quickly because of the speed up that the Karma gets to throw into the back pocket of their jungler.
Yeah, gotta go fast. Frost Force would look great on the Hecarim, but this flexibility with the Karma is always very nice. Technically, triple lanes can really flex it too. Primarily mid and support usually ends up being the way forward. The Karma Kenji looked fantastic on it. I would like it on Ivano as well. Playstyle that he has so far. Hovering so far for wildcard developmental is just going to be the Seraphine. Kind of just playing with the heartstrings for the time being with this hover. Not really. Oh, did they dedicate to it? Oh, yeah, that is locked in. That is locked in. Okay.
It's actually kind of cool because Wildcard is one of the few organizations. Wildcard is one of the few organizations that actually they play Seraphine pretty consistently. They played it in the mid lane and in the bottom lane position back when Psycho was around. I know they played it on the main roster and on the backup roster, and so it's even crept its way down into Wildcard developmental. I don't know who the CEO of Wildcard is, but obviously somebody likes this champion to continue bringing it back consistently. With the buffs that it got this pass, it's actually an incredible champion, and I'm glad that somebody is actually taken to actually using it. Whether or not it's going to Yurasan, or whether it's going to Snow, whether it's going to Onat, still yet to be seen, but it is cool to see them adapting to some of the new meta changes and just trying out some of the new champions and such.
And a lot of flexibility out of wildcard so far. Even the Graves itself can flex around just a bit. Lock-in for Winthrop University is going to be back for the Ezreal, so just kind of securing this comfort, kind of securing this safety into the bottom lane, and really defaulting back to that.
See, this is tearing apart the entirety of the structure that Winthrop is going for here. How are you supposed to play as a Hecarim from Frost Forest if you know that Vex is an avid Glue Factory attendee and brings samples all the time? Last game, how many times did Vex kill Maniac on that poor horse to take him and make sure that the fresh glue is there for him to be able to consume at his own time? The taste was delicious time and time again. And now Winthrop is the one with the horse. He has to be terrified right now that Vex is just going to be like, oh, let's go in here. And then he dies. He's like, oh, no, I guess if the corpse is there, three little pigs with a wolf. It's like, oh, their dead body just happens to be under the crushed house. I mean, I might as well eat it, right?
Dean, that tangent. It
was sorry.
We went from glue eating to three little pigs.
I've kind of been awake since like 4 a.m. So.
All right, we'll excuse it, Dean. We'll excuse it. Second phase of pick bans going through. Support focus coming out for Winthrop, Senna, and Nautilus banned away. Towards the top lane for Wildcard Developmental. So they take away the Jace solo lanes altogether. Silas gets banned away. Still a lot of flexibility coming out from both squads in this draft.
I do like that Wildcard has decided to take away the Silas just because they've got some disgusting ultimates already that they can throw into their back pocket with like the Encore and the ultimate coming through from the Xin Zhao. We had a hover of the champion that both of us wanted to see. I know that for at least 1 minute, but unfortunately there's no Yorick that's coming. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be the blind Camille. No. See, you had the face ready too. Oh man, it would have been great.
They almost heard you. They almost heard you. Ravish. It's okay. It's okay. Soon. If anyone were to do it, it would be my bud, or Alorum for that fact. But I would expect my bud to go down. Maokai.
It's probably not top lane Maokai. I could be wrong about that. It for a very long time, it's basically only been at support, and that's like been the best place for it. And I know they nerfed it. That puts it at ADC, okay, which means that we could have Graves top is almost certainly the decision here, so it's almost certainly going to be Maokai in the bottom lane, and then it's going to be the Seraphine in the mid lane. It's probably what's going to end up happening. Again, there's a little bit of shifting around that could happen depending on where they want to put positions. I wanted to talk about the fact that earlier today we actually had a Camille flex hit to support for VCS this morning for the first time since 2017 when Camille was released as a champion. If you remember when Big used to do it when it first came out, but unfortunately they just go for the Akali. They stick that Camille in the top lane. Mapbud's going to be able to do quite a bit of work on that champion. And then, of course, the Akali for Ivana is another dive champion to put him into the back line when the time comes.
Okay, are we getting a flip on that? Is that verified? Okay. That's verified? It's okay. Okay, Zeri in the mid lane. All right. Nice. Dean, save me, because I have no idea what's going on anymore.
It's a matter of, I think, Akali doesn't really have great ways to punish very, very quickly. I think eventually Onat's going to have to put quite a bit of onus into making sure you don't go down to Ivano in the mid side. But for the most part, it's a decently free laning phase. And because your Q is unlocked and you're not just like latched at the hip to auto attacks like other ADCs, I think it's easier to play into the Shroud, which makes a lot of sense. Well, and for the most part, you are range versus a melee champion. And the bottom side, you have a lot more wave clear for the Seraphine, so it's easier to punish for the Ezreal lane more than anything else. And so here, they must have looked at this and they said, okay, the correct angle to look at is to make sure we get a free laning phase for Zeri, and we get push on bottom side to go for neutral objectives on the bottom side when the time comes. And this is where they landed. Onat is the one that gets his hands on the champion. Reminds me of Darshan pulling out the champion in the top lane for the first time. Basically, I think it was like the second person that played it inside of Academy, one of the first players to play it in the entire world. And you hear Onat wanting to kind of replicate that kind of solo lane success.
I am definitely not against the idea of the Zeri in the mid lane. All your points, solid as they can be. But for the bottom lane, that is where my worries for Wildcard Developmental really start to come in, just from the early harassment, what we saw in game number 1 from Winthrop's bottom lane, where they were just willing to push for that level 2 engage and try and get first blood off of that. Yeah, that's my worries right there. Will Wildcard Developmental be able to survive the early stages of the bot lane of Winthrop?
It's last game it was definitely a lot harder to actually do so. This game I think they've got more range to work with to begin with, and they are still playing into the same bottom side for Winthrop, which is kind of a terrifying prospect because Vex and Kenji looked merciless at the level 2 point. But now with the Maokai, like you've got some saplings to be able to work with. I actually think there's quite a bit of cheese that could come about from just a level 1 coming in from Snow and from Urasan if you use the right combination of like summoners and keystones and just aggress against the bottom brush. And so I'm really looking to whether or not Kenji runs into bottom brush immediately to throw a ward down because it's an important one. And if they do that, it would signal that there's an option on the other side of the map to go aggressive. But nope, Wildcard's not going to do anything like that. It looks like they're just going to 5-point all things considered.
All right, a little bit of a technical issue coming in now. Getting into the grand scope of this game right now, it definitely means a lot more for Wildcard Developmental to try and get a win right here, right now, because taking this loss is pretty much almost a guarantee that they're not going to make it into the playoffs bracket. They have to bring pretty much the best hit they can for this game number 2.
Yeah, they're not exactly playing for their playoff lives, I don't think guaranteed, but again, a loss here makes it definitely a lot harder to actually try to find something here if you're Wildcard Developmental. So if you want to make sure that you don't have to put your hands into the favor of somebody else, especially teams that are also trying to get in, you definitely want to get out of this with a win in your own book, which is going to be tough to do. It's definitely a tough prospect for what we saw in game number 1, but not impossible by any standard at all. Notice, if you will, there was no ward to go down from Kenji. They're going to go for an interior invade, and Snow's going to get pushed back a little bit. Actually, they get the ward, which is quite nice. And Onat actually grabs it, which means that he's going to be level 2 pretty quickly. Not that it's the most impactful level 2 in the world as a Zeri to punish Ivana with. But importantly, they are not going to get bottom push here for Urasan and Snow to try to get any kind of burst damage into either Vex or Sir Kenji. Vex and Sir Kenji are actually going to get there first and maybe do the exact same thing that they did in the previous one and jump onto Urasan and Snow, who themselves are helping out with a leash. I was kind of hoping they would set up in the tri-brush. We'll see if they want to like posture forward and just go for anything aggressive, but it kind of depends. It looks like Kenji's going for it, and that Vex is just the one catching the wave.
Pushing forward will be the bot lane of Winthrop University. Red buff starts for both junglers. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Frost Force for that start. Given that Wildcard Developmental, they are going to be looking for some level of push and control for this bottom lane. Wouldn't be too abstract of an idea for Frost Force to try and capitalize on that, get something going down bottom, but Winthrop University's bot lane already, just with the relentless harassment, trying to zone out bot lane of Wildcard Developmental.
Felt a good amount of the effect already from just having jumped past a lot of that initial play that had come through. Kenji out of the brush just basically immediately started it so that Urasan was going to take damage. And Snow, without being able to auto-attack, doesn't really have any sustain either. And so it's a difficult situation for the two of them to be in when the wave is controlled so heavily from Vex and Sir Kenji to begin the game. This is kind of what happened last time. Biggest difference is you didn't have like the Flash W at level 2 for Sir Kenji to really punish with. This time it's a little more dangerous to do that as well underneath of a tower, especially into a Maokai who's got a root with an aftershock. To kill him afterwards is going to be a larger prospect to have to deal with. But if they bounce this wave, it's going to time quite nicely with Frost Forest finishing the red buff, heading into bottom side. So maybe that's what they're actually looking for, is an attempted play from your faithful everyday horse who's trying not to go to the glue factory in Frost Forest here.
But we might see a play out of Onat before that can even happen. Now already rotating out towards the Scuttle Crab. Not putting down a ward just yet. Scoping out that positioning for the time being. I can't tell if there was a deep ward place. No, I believe there wasn't there. So yeah, only getting loosened out from the lane. Vano taking track of summoner spells, going the teleport and ignite route. So no flash there, but can get towards the bottom lane, at least in a timely manner if Onat does get freed up.
Okay. It's actually... Oh, Vex. Okay, I really wanted him to not push that because they had an opportunity potentially to let this wave shove back out, go the other direction, and then for Hecarim to be able to gank on the timer because he full cleared for bottom side, then took Scuttle Crab. But Vex jumped this timer just to try to put some additional poke, and you can see the ramifications of it. That means that now all of a sudden Maniac is here to cover for a gank like this.
Ooh, both junglers are here. Vex and Kenji really poking out underneath the tower of the bot lane of Wildcard Developmental. Both junglers just meeting up, and little parting handshake right after. No one willing to engage fully onto this one. But I gotta tell you, Dean, this is a little bit cathartic for me. I'm gonna be honest, I'm part of the hate Seraphine train. You know, I kind of follow flowers onto that one, but mostly because I'm older in the scene. I do like Dominion. I do follow the lore of Dominion. I just want to see her die.
That was harsh. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, so is sacrificing the souls of Skarner's people.
Listen. I know, I've heard it's a very horrible thing, and she is an absolute criminal that may perhaps to deserve punishment for her crimes. But here we are not, in fact, ready to part that. You can see.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think that's Vex's job, to be quite honest, in this game.
Oh, Kenji caught out here.
Oh, no!
No, he does get the first blood support being traded in this bottom lane. It's a teleport burnt from Onat. Maniac will catch the wave in the mid.
Very well played from Sir Kenji, being able to just sneak that first blood away. It was support for support, all things said and done. So ends up not mattering all that much. Both ADCs actually got assists as well, and it ends up ultimately just being that Vex has a slight advantage in terms of gold. And that means the Sheen and the Longsword are getting a purchase in exchange for just the Amplifying Tome coming in from Urasan, which is a good amount of chunk damage, because the number of times that a single Q has landed off the back of like an ult Q coming in for Sir Kenji, and that being more than enough to chunk out completely Urasan, especially with like without any additional sustain than the W, it actually prompts Urasan to be so down bad, I guess, for like sustaining the lane phase. He bought a regeneration or regen pot. Maybe gonna turn it into corrupting. I kind of highly doubt it will after the tier gets purchased, but still, the fact that he needed to buy refillable after his first back just goes to show you how much the Ezreal and the Karma can be a nuisance in terms of poke in the laning phase. And now Sir Kenji, he is the superior enchanter. Be gone.
Yeah, nuisance is an understatement, Dean. What's going on in that bottom lane? It's pretty much free farm for Vex, and a lot of bowling going on over there. Now Maniac trying to focus over towards this top side, where Mabud is not getting too much the upper hand of these exchanges with dots. Dive going on in the bot lane as Yerson flashes away. Mabud still holding. He has the ultimatum, level 6 for Dot as well, trying to play around this tower. Ultimatum's going to go out, locks down Maniac, who dies in the tower. A hook shot back in, gets right behind the minion, so can't even return fire. Dot watches his jungler go down.
And now, I mean, he just has to walk away out of fear that anything else happens, and Mabud just continues to go out for blood. That was a situation where you have two people underneath of the tower for Mabud, and yet Mabud is the one who's actually going out hunting like a shark.
Oh, and he's just waiting over the wall. He's not going to fall for anything. Dot can get a couple of shots in. Ooh. And this is not true to lore. He should be hitting that wall, but Onat has arrived, takes down Mabud.
And that's the benefit, I suppose, to playing this area, is just that, again, you're a range champion, you've got better wave clear to start things off in Ivano, and the kill threat is there eventually from the Akali onto Zeri, but it's going to be a minute. Ivano wants to cut him off now and potentially start using some of that kill threat.
Ooh, this is one of the nice things about taking the Zeri into the Akali. You can get those shots into the Shroud while Ivano's using that. Now an attempted gank towards the bot lane for Maniac. Onat getting low in the mid lane. Keep your eyes on Frost Forest, who's waiting in the jungle of Maniac. Still scoping out where he's going. Not committing just yet. Going to spot him. Gets spotted out by a sweeper in the process. Now Frost Forest going right after him. The Crescent Guard going to be used. Onslaught of Shadows onto Maniac. Maniac goes low, but Frost Forest goes lower. Ivano gets some vengeance. Takes down the jungler. Onat getting some pop shots in, but Sir Kenji is there to provide the shields and some damage from himself. Over the wall comes Vex. Another Mystic shot lands. This one onto Snow. It's going to make Yorsan's shot miss. Sad for that one as the True Shot Barrage comes through. The follow-up from Vex nets another kill. Now Yerson underneath his tower. Yes, give it to me. Give it to me. Another pop shot. Take down that Seraphine. Go ahead, get that Mystic shot. The juggling's there, though, from Yerson. Yerson is going to get the recall out. Actually, is Yerson going to be fine here? Answer might be yes. Surrounding the tower. Kenji wants to make that a no. Flashes. Vex doesn't get it. Kenji gets it, though. Kenji's able to get that kill. It doesn't matter that Vex burnt his flash. Now the fight going to continue over in the mid lane as running towards the red buff. Will be Mabud gets to safety. But what just happened? Dean, break it down.
Here's my thought, right? Vex's only choice here, because he's trying to like get around the minion wave and he's trying to get underneath the tower, he didn't want to soak aggro, was he's like, Vex, I'm going to act goofy. So he misses his Q by an absolute mile and then just flashes away. I have a better explanation for this, but we'll play out first.
Oh, this is looking bad for
Winthrop
as Wildcard Developmental. Off the power of Onat's rotation, he gets there timely. He's able to save the team fight.
Actually quite nice, and the reinforcement is actually here from Sir Kenji and Ivano if they want to try to contest a little bit of something, because right now there is a Rift Herald on the back. This, they get it!
Popped. Rift Herald picked up by Winthrop, stolen away. They were able to grab Maniac. Snow jumps in. Onat still going for those little mosquito bites, but too low is Snow. He will drop, and now return to fire coming out of Winthrop as they start chasing down Wildcard Developmental. Dot is there. Shotgun in the face of Sir Kenji over the wall. Kenji will not be able to land it. Onat gets the safety.
It's a position where like Wildcard make this really aggressive shift up to the top side, and I love the way that they've actually been using the mid lane Zeri to have just like this massive priority and a consistent damage dealer for everybody to play out in front of Onat, and to be like this kind of front line for him to be able to do quite a bit of work on. But unfortunately, that situation was won really heavily by Ivano, but also Sir Kenji, who has this massive roam up to the top side of the map. That kind of defines the fact that like they win the 3v2 because so much health was missing after like all this work was done into killing Mabud and Frost Force that again Winthrop is able to punish to pretty heavy avail, and that means the Rift Herald goes into the pockets of Ivano, which is awesome because he stole it at like 192 health. The smite wasn't there from Maniac to be able to secure that one at the last second, and it also potentially opens up for Dragon on the bottom side. It's very rare a team is going to be able to grab both. Also, I don't know if you know this. You know that when you E onto somebody as Ezreal, if it targets them and then you cast an ability without moving, that it actually tracks that ability to that person?
No, I did not know that.
That's, I think, what... So, the meme explanation was he was distracting for Urasan so that the ability could come through from Kenji to tag him with an ult Q and kill him anyway. What he was actually doing was attempting to use that mechanic so he didn't have to aim, so he could immediately flash out from the tower. I'm assuming that's what the attempt was. And he's good enough. I've seen him actually use it inside of games before, so I think he was just a little too far away for it to actually happen. So if you're a little baffled about what Vex was doing, that's actually what he was doing.
I mean, it's a better explanation than what I had, because it's kind of one of those things that I viewed as, hey, I've gotten this far, screw it. We're just going for it. We're just going for it.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I was thinking at the time, but, you know, I prefer your explanation, Dean. I prefer it much more. Bud doesn't prefer this attention he's getting in the top side, though.
No, he does not.
In Maniac, applying pressure over there. It is going to score a couple of plates over for Dot, who has been doing quite decently over on this top side.
Yeah, it's been a much better game for Dot. They've kind of released him from the clamps that are Mabud's insane kind of individual skill. And in this game, picking the Camille into the Graves, I think was Dot's okay with that. Dot was alright with what happened here. Ivano finds Maniac just backing, and Ivano's just going to kill him.
Yeah, this is a little too familiar. And of course it's Kenji grabbing it as well.
Kenji's just like, yoink, thanks, fam. He like had the ultimate too. I don't know what Ivano was saving it for. I don't know if that was intentional, if they wanted Kenji to have it, but I don't get why they would want Kenji to have it.
That was BM in the comms completely.
Maybe they called for Kenji to get an assist or something, and Kenji's just so strong he didn't realize he'd kill him with a Q.
It was Mantrid. Yep. Karma has a lot of damage. You gotta expect.
Karma's got, especially at this point with 4 kills, Kenji's got a lot of damage.
4-1-2. My goodness.
The supports have really just been carrying out of their minds.
Portal combat.
It's been crazy. Ooh. Okay. Was it 3,500 gold lead that currently sits for Winthrop? I want to point out one item, just because I think it's cool. Urasan actually went for Rylize. This is something that is really neat, because if you get a Glacial slow or a Rylize slow, your E works as a root no matter what the situation, so you don't need an empowered E to actually work. That's what it's for. Sorry.
So it was looking okay for Dot thus far, waiting for that Ignite to come down to cut a lot of the healing. It doesn't come fast enough. Dot gets low, but who is lower? That is Mabud, 6 feet lower on top of that one as Maniac joins the fight, going after Sir Kenji, who falls to about 100 health. Vex showing up way too late.
And they found the member that really cannot actually find aggression into their opposing member, because Mabud now, even with the support of Sir Kenji, wasn't able to kill off Dot. It looked like even the Ignite got burnt right there, which is a little bit crazy to think about, that they burnt the Ignite on Dot and was still able to sustain through that fight long enough for Mabud to go down and not really get a trade-off even through the Ezreal ultimate. It was kind of insane how much they were able to put into Dot and not to be able to not actually die in a situation like that. very different situation from what we saw last game, because last game it was a little bit of shenanigans here and there that were really causing Wildcard to be able to pull kills onto the right members and put gold into the right places. This time their bot lane is at quite a bit of a deficit, but Onat and Dot are actually feeling great in this game. They're looking fantastic. They've got more than enough kills. The Zeri is primed and ready to go for team fighting whenever the time starts, and yes, you do have a Kali that's ready. Ivano's ready to get Rary and get going and assassinate the Zeri when the time comes. But Dot is going to be a pretty good kind of backup carry if they need to, just as the Graves is going to have so much sustain in his back pocket that close up when he's fighting against basically 3 melee champions. That's going to be great. A lot of people circling.
Is it Ono for Onat? We'll find out later. Look at the bottom lane. Ivano chasing down Dot, and, well, Mabud can't take him, but Ivano can. Finds the assassination in the bottom lane, while the rest of Winthrop skedaddle right out of the jungle of Wildcard.
Yeah, I was thinking that there was going to be more fighting, but they must have just been like, okay, we won on the bottom side. We don't want to give anything up. We don't have one of our more powerful members, so not that concerned. Oh, goodness. Yeah, support Maokai with no gold doesn't get very tanky very fast, unfortunately. So Snow, feeling the effects of the poke that's coming in from Kenji and Vex even more so now that they're pinched underneath of the mid tower. And again, the W isn't there from Urisan to really put a bunch of damage in. He doesn't have a ridiculous amount of AP, doesn't have like the Moonstone to be able to have additional healing or any extra bonus healing from anything else in that regard. So it's a position where, again, without a lot of sustain, it's difficult to kind of sit against this Karma and Ezreal lane, which are just bullying down this mid-outer tower. Again, not that much damage actually in the back pocket of Urisan, much more utility based on the Seraphine right now. Frostforce is just outright winning this one-on-one as well.
Going right after Maniac. Onat going to join the fray, but so will Vex and Sir Kenji. Maniac gets the kill on the Frost. Vex falls before he can get Maniac. Onat getting the shutdown off of that one. Now Ivano, last one in this fight. Sir Kenji sends him a parting gift with the Q popped. Onat will chase down Sir Kenji. The charm lands in a triple kill for Onat.
That was dirty from Urisan to be able to find that final ultimate, but again, this is another masterclass from Wildcard Developmental, proving that they've got the team fighting chops to be able to stand up with some of the best of them. And in this game, they've got Onat in a proper position to go for carrying, Dot's able to kind of go for carrying and things, and the rest of the team really is just there to frontline to make sure that Onat's going to have the damage to be able to carry fights like that. There, I will say Winthrop got a little big for their britches. Like you said, not only did Frostforce die without being able to really capitalize, but the fact that Vex died on the go, on the like kind of dive in the attempted play before anything really got accomplished was also very painful. But Ivano being down the ultimate meant that there was no way for him to kind of clean up a fight like that. If the ultimate is available for Akali, almost certainly he's able to clean up 2-3 kills, maybe even just 1v4 in that situation. Because it was down, there's no way Akali's going to be able to carry that situation out.
We'll see if we can have the Onat show now. Dot trying to get away from the situation he's got locked in, but here comes Onat. A 1-for-1 trade so far turns into a 2-for-1, and Onat's gonna gun him down, going godlike, making this a 2-for-2.
Yeah, really, really confident play for people within Pog sliding range of Onat. It's a little bit crazy to think about that. Now another one in Pog sliding range. Would you look at that?
Pog sliding all over the place, but here comes Ivano going after Onat. Mystic shot on the back line. Vex has to flash over the wall to stay alive. Now Ivano jumping back in onto Urisan. Urisan goes golden, and Onat punishes Mabud. Now on the run as Vex gets some pop shots in, going right after Snow. Mabud is caught out. Will jump with the ultimatum, but takes down no one. 2 down for Winthrop, none down for Wildcard. They'll grab Drake.
It is incredible just how easy it has been for Wildcard to begin to transition this team fight that they've got into just Onat being able to auto-attack and throw Qs into anybody that he sees fit, because there's just nobody to be able to contest him in the back line. It's supposed to be Ivano. That's pretty much your one real threat. Mapbot isn't in a position to do it in this game. Frostforce isn't really in a position yet to do it in this game, and you've got some damage in Vex and in Sir Kenji, but not enough. It really has to be Ivano that assassinates Onat, but that just has not set up for them in the slightest. Even with the ultimate available, they haven't been able to put enough damage in, especially now with Titanic and with Trinity Force done. Wildcard Developmental look terrifying. They're tied in dragons. They're actually up. They're still down about 400 gold somehow over the course of this game. That's still the case. But nonetheless, again, when you're talking about scaling towards the next team fight and what that's going to mean, Wildcard Developmental are perfectly fine with where their area is at to be able to full carry fights. You've seen it now twice in a row work to absolute plumb for them.
This is so great for Wildcard Developmental, a team that's been struggling throughout this season, 2-3 in series thus far. They're taking on an undefeated team in the season and taking them to their limit. Snow gets low, the charm comes in, Urisan beautiful with the ultimate. Here comes Onat. Onat looking to pick off Frost. Onslaught of Shadows used to retreat as Winthrop go deep into the jungle of Wildcard and have to evacuate.
Yeah, they go after Snow, and they're not quite able to bring him down. He's very squishy, but they just don't quite have the damage to bring him to full send him to the grave right there. And the punishment from the rest of the team comes in swift enough. Thankfully, again, it's like an Ezreal and a Karma who has Flash and a Hecarim, so you're able to walk out. They're beefy enough. They're able to kind of leave the situation. And the best part of all of this is that in the meantime, Ivana was actually able to snag Tap Tower, which, again, is the most important member here, I think, for trying to assassinate Onat over the course of some of these fights, is to make sure that your assassin that gets into the backline is going to have the damage necessary to remove the champion threat once the champion is in striking range. What in the world happened with Urasan right there?
King Vex happened, and he's
Yes,
on
sir.
Ezreal. Found it, killed it, got it. Still, though, Onat in the top side will pick up another tower, more gold going over to Onat. That's going to be a huge target for Winthrop. If they can take down Onat, Wildcard pretty much lose everything. It's nice to get kills onto Snow like you have right here. Not the best pathing for Snow to take, but it's not the defining kills that Winthrop really need to just take this game single-handedly. Has to be onto Onat. And there he is right there. Onat now showing up, led by Maniac. Rest of Winthrop backing out towards this Dragon area.
Pretty good stuff actually coming out right there from a number of different players. First off, poking in after getting the Seraphine pick, after what looked like it was Urasan trying to catch a wave too high up, and that meant that Vex was actually able to kind of find a fight and infringement into his territory. Actually, we get a fight for the river right now.
Oh, Kenji goes down. Onat onto Vex. Already jumping forward was Vex. He doesn't have the arcane shift. He will fall. Onat getting some priority targets, but Onat has finally dropped. There is no more sources of damage on Wildcard Developmental readily available. You have to buy time for Dot to get here, and Ivano has marked Dot. Ivano jumping in onto Dot. Mabud falls. Ivano getting in the shots onto Dot. Dot will drop, and Ivano only has one more tree to cleave through, and he will do just that. He will be the lumberjack required for Winthrop to take the ace.
And just like that, it's off the back of a couple of members going down and not being in position to fight immediately. Between Snow being picked off and Urasan being picked off, the setup wasn't really there for Wildcard to be looking for your 5-on-5, and they contested for the bottom river. They didn't want to fall behind in setup for the Dragon or whatever the situation was. That was prompting them to make sure that Winthrop was going to get control of the bottom river, but unfortunately Winthrop had all their pieces together, and they had a lot of their team fighting tools because they didn't need any of them to take that engagement on the mid tower. And so it ended up just being an outnumbered fight that you claimed at the beginning. You didn't have your big kind of turning tool at the beginning with the Encore, and it did end up being massive for Urasan, but it hits 3 people far too late inside of the fight to actually make a difference, and it opens up a lot better opportunities for Winthrop, who now claim back what is a 3,000 gold lead. You're set up for a Dragon that's going to be spawning in less than a minute now, and your players are feeling a lot better. The biggest one, of course, is Ivana, who now has 2.5 items. 2 items and then a Magi's in the back pocket to be able to work with. But you could see the damage that he was able to accomplish in the last fight when you aren't just getting ripped through by Onat because the front line was not able to set up in time.
And Dean, you can only imagine the damage he's going to do now because 3 kills were picked up in that last exchange. One of those was a shutdown onto Onat, which was, anywhere between 700, 900 gold. It was a massive amount to pick up for Ivano. He's now going to be primed for this Baron fight as Winthrop try and get into position. Mabud and Dot not exactly in the best places. No teleport for Mabud. The team fight breaks out. It's going to be a while before he gets there. Dot now trying to get available here as he jumps in. Going deep is going to be Ivano, but he's all by his lonesome, waiting for that true shot barrage to follow through as Ivano tries to find an escape over the wall. Ivano is going to be able to get away. He will get to safety, but now Wildcard Developmental, they're looking at the Baron once again as they say Winthrop headed southbound.
Actually, very impressive start right there from Winthrop University to stall out the Baron to be able to get Ivano out of that situation. Yes, you do end up losing the ultimate, which I think is big for being able to contest the Baron buff. They get the Dragon on the other side of the map. Now this Baron is getting absolutely ripped through right now. They have to find a way to stop it because it seems like Wildcard's going to be able to just walk away for free because they traded off the Dragon for it. I don't know that they were expecting that full turn, but now Frost Force has got a wraparound.
Frost Force has got the Onslaught of Shadows, goes right after Maniac. Maniac's going to fall. Vex picks up that one. Now looking for Dot. True Shot Barrage goes out, lands onto Dot. Sir Kenji looking to snare him. Only Vex waiting to hop over the wall. He does not have his Arcane Shift. Doesn't want to burn the Flash just yet. Not going to chase down. Happy grabbing Maniac, conserving these resources, but for Wildcard, they were able to get the Baron.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you're denying it more so from Winthrop to be able to really kind of capitalize and finish this game on the back of this Baron take, because the gold and the sieging of the towers would have been more than enough to set up Winthrop's map for an absolute win, because there's almost no way you get a good setup from Wildcard if they have full control, they've taken down all your outer structures to be able to work with. And so here, Winthrop takes full advantage of the fact that they themselves were the ones that got the dragon. They find a bit of a pick-off on the other side. Wildcard is perfectly fine handshaking this, all things considered, because it means eventually that they've got themselves a back pocket thing to stall this game out more with, so that they can play more for this team fight that's built around some of their key players.
We head towards the 25-minute mark. 2K separating these teams. Winthrop being in the lead. A lot still on the map for Wildcard to close out that gold lead. It's not too big for them, but a lot of that gold has been funneled onto Onat, who's been popping off these later stages of the game, and now looking for more is going to be Maniac. Has to back off, gets Kenji low. True Shot Barrage goes off. Mid turret gonna fall. Onat hopping in for more. Vicious flank looking to come in from Ivano. Teleport looking to go through. Joins the fight. Here comes My Bud from one end. Pressing guard gonna be used. Blocks a little bit of damage, but it expires, and so does Maniac. Now Ivano joining the fray, gets charmed up. Onslaught of Shadows coming out from Frost Force, but Ivano's gonna drop. Onat unchecked. So is Vex. Mabud and Kenji completely split out from the rest of the group, but a unit is going to be Wildcard Developmental. Winthrop gonna retreat.
Kind of incredible. Both ADCs actually putting in a very, very high amount of work to make sure that this team fight stays very exciting. The biggest thing, though, again, is that Ivano got removed. They understand now on the side of Wildcard Developmental that this is the player that needs to be taken out of the fights. And so the Seraphine ultimate was not directed towards hitting a bulk of players to set up Onat for a big play where you get a bunch of through damage, but instead on making sure that instead Ivano was going to be prevented from killing off Onat, which is huge for preventing a fight from going their way. So that means Wildcard Developmental, they walk into the mid lane, they grab the mid inhibitor. It's a big tool, because obviously you can shove out mid lane and it's easier to set up for dragons now. But given that two are in the back pocket of Winthrop, they are comfortable saying, okay, we could give up two pretty easily. The next one is going to be free if they don't just decide to jump the mid inhibitor wave coming through. Because if they lose a fight around dragon, when that's down, they probably just lose the game, all things, after all things are done. But here, they find themselves probably in a position where they're comfortable pushing out in the mid wave and then looking for a 5-on-5 up against Wildcard Developmental.
When it comes to this next Baron Dance, or Dragon Dance for that matter, Wildcard are going to have a pretty easy time having priority over this mid lane, thanks to those super minions you were just talking about, Dean. Now grouping up Wildcard Developmental. They've been fighting tooth and nail in this game thus far. Onat hopping off so far a stud. Trinity Force as a Titanic Hydra, Black Cleaver as well. And control for Wildcard Developmental will be catered towards this bottom side. They know that dragon spawning within the next minute, it is going to be an Infernal Drake. Not the most crucial Drake to grab, given it's not a soul point for either team, but getting that win condition and getting those stats, of course, is going to be lovely for Wildcard Developmental. You see Dot towards this bot, and Ivano is stalking him out, but Onat is within the vicinity. Fi gonna break out. Ivano thinks it's a 1v1, but here comes Onat into the Shroud. Ivano goes, looking to take Dot down with him, using the Hourglass delays the inevitable as Onat takes down Ivano.
Very interesting. This is just looking across the map at what the play setup was. I think Winthrop was fully expecting for Wildcard to just step into the river and go for that dragon, but there's still a wave or 30 seconds on the jump timer compared to what that play is going to look like, and so they end up in a position where their Akali gets punished. Here in the mid lane, they're getting a return kill, but this is as the bottom side push was coming through. Notice also that Malbud's still on top side pushing for a lot more, and so now punishment actually better now here coming out from Winthrop, because they were able to get towers in multiple positions, and they're wrestling away a little bit of territory back from Wildcard Developmental to be able to maybe infringe upon this dragon take.
They might go for this play right now. Mabud is far away, but he does have teleport, so if a fight were to be contested, there will be no smite for Wildcard Developmental, but here goes Onat. He's going right after Vex. Vex gets low. Wow. Vex gets shut down. Frost Forest hits the road. He gets hit by Onat. He hits the floor. Onat with a double kill. Drake is taken, and this could be the game right here, Dean. Wildcard Developmental, they're fighting back.
Oh my goodness, absolutely disgusting coming out from Onat, just being able to jump into the wall and become this massive assassin to be able to bring down Vex. There's no team fighting remaining. Yes, you've got 3 members here. Ivano is still available to be able to potentially put threat into Onat. That's about all you got. You got to make sure that he goes down in a fight if you're going to try to contest this base. Next wave's coming in. Baron buff is gone, so there's that. You have that spawning in 20 seconds, something like that. I think you have to be careful if you're a wild card, because if you give up right here, potentially lose the game off the back of the Baron take. Get back on Ivano.
That exhaust right onto Ivano. He has to leave the fight. My bud using the ultimatum, but he is far too low to fight any further. Goes down. Winthrop have had an undefeated season, and they're willing to try to fight for it. As going in will be Maniac. Wildcard Developmental. They're going to end that win streak. 10-0. It dies right now.
Oh, see, when we walked into the series, I told you, Eric, I told you, Ona is the guy you got to keep your eyes on. And what did they do all through the early game? That was their focus. Put everything into the mid lane Zeri. Make sure that this team fight is set up so that this Zeri can find success after success after success. And it happened again and again and again, where all the time, if this Zeri is alive and not getting pressured out of the fight, this whole team is ready to die for the cause to make sure that the Zeri just completely carries them out of it. And I don't think Winthrop was ready for that type of situation. They weren't ready and raring to play this pure 5-on-5 style of fight. They weren't able to kind of have this early game that they needed to really kind of bully out what happened. And so now they dropped their first game, the potential of their first series. Everything's threatened. Everything's on the line now, Eric.
Yeah, the first game loss for Winthrop, and I want to correct, it is 11-1 now for Winthrop University, winning that previous game that they had earlier. So Wildcard Developmental being able to end that win streak is already a pretty big victory in my book. Now they just need one more game to take a series and put themselves in prime positionings to be secured for playoffs. Are they going to be able to get that? It's a big question to be answered. We need another game for that. We're going to throw it to a short break. When we return, we'll get into that series and continue with Wildcard Developmental versus Winthrop University. Welcome back, everyone, to the Unified Premier League. Winthrop University versus Wildcard Developmental. And Dean, we're going to a game 3. Developmental, they struck back.
They did. Winthrop has not played the cleanest of series of all time. I'm hoping that this kind of breaks them out of it, and that this series, or this time, they're actually able to play a lot more controlled of a game that we're accustomed them to making, not making these massive kind of overreaching mistakes, and instead just sticking to what they know, which again is typically scaling for some of the late games. Some of the stuff that Wildcard Developmental really has been looking to do tends to be a strong point for Winthrop, and I'm really surprised they haven't just decided to say, "Hey, let's take them by the horns and let's see what we can do in this game."
Now, to talk about the implications of that last game again, this was an undefeated streak so far by Winthrop University in the UPL itself. 11 games, victory, 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 victory. Wildcard Developmental handing them their first one. While it does hurt as a Winthrop fan, you always got to keep in mind that this is definitely an experimental phase where a lot of the practice is coming in for a lot of these teams. But still, you can't discount Wildcard for what they brought. You can't discount Onat for the performance he was able to put in that game too.
Now, the fact that they've been able to stand up this effectively against the number one team inside of the group, and especially delivering them their first loss, especially when even last week Harrisburg wasn't able to deliver them a loss, is kind of incredible. Especially given that they have a new jungler, because again, their jungler showed up 3 days ago. That was when he got added officially to the roster. So I know Maniac is not brand new to the wildcard system, but the fact that Wildcard had a different jungler kind of step in at the last possible moment. I have no idea how much scrim time they've had with him, what they've been able to accomplish. But clearly, they aren't even necessarily operating on all cylinders, and still they've been able to find a way to really make these compositions work, to really be able to punish what Winthrop has been doing throughout both of the first 2 games. So props or hats off, I suppose, to Wildcard Developmental, just because again, it's not easy to adapt that quickly.
Yeah, we got to see what side is going to be selected for this next one. With Wildcard Developmental, I did enjoy them being on that blue side. I think it was very smart to give the Zinjao to Maniac once again, because Maniac was getting picked off like a fly in that game number 1. You had the artificial tankiness of just having that ultimate. It's a very easy champion to execute. We are seeing the side selection now as Winthrop will be on blue side. So we'll see how that adaptation goes through.
It's a matter of, it seems like in game number 1, Wildcard Developmental didn't really have a place on the map that they were trying to attack until they started to group up. And at that point, Winthrop had such an advantage, it was really hard to throw an advantage that large, as opposed to game number 2, where you had members to play around, where it was like, okay, Urison and Snow weren't having the greatest of laning phases, but like you had a Seraphine who's going to be valuable for just the ultimate most of the time. You got a tank, and then they had Onat and Dot that were like in a good place. So again, for me, Wildcard Developmental, now on the red side, they're looking to just get one of their lanes into a positive position to start playing around to begin the game. And for Winthrop, if they can break apart the map and prevent that from happening, again, it seems like a very easy way to be able to kind of just command how the early game and in the mid game goes before the team fighting really starts to get kind of fished out by Wildcard Developmental in an attempt to get that 5-on-5 score.
So now Winthrop with a little bit of a change up. They're not going to let that mid Zeri go through once again, so that will be banned away. Going to ban the Eve. Maniac's just never going to get a chance to really play that champion. Sadly, when that's the only thing they can scout you out on, well, that's the only thing they're going to ban.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of your most played champions and they have the fear of it potentially coming out, I mean, like I said, I attribute it to, like, the Malice, like, just perma-banning the Evelynn just because, like, what are you supposed to do about it if he gets his hands on it because it's just too powerful? And Maniac's the same way, where it's like, okay, you give him the Evelynn, he's going to take over a game. We just can't give him the Evelynn. It's that simple. There's no counterplay to it. And it's also one of those champions that you don't get a lot of experience against inside of competitive, and so for Frostfords, it's like, what do you have prepared in your back pocket for an Evelynn pick or for anything else that's really unique to Maniac? And obviously, I think they aren't really game planning for that kind of thing. So instead, they just decide to ban it away, keep things a lot more standard inside of the jungle position. I almost want to see an Ezreal ban from Wildcard Developmental just to push Vex onto something that is not Ezreal. Jinx has been let through multiple times over the course of this series, but I'd still be interesting to see what exactly goes through it, like the B1 pick versus anything else, because again, there's a lot of ADCs that have kind of poked up into the meta as of this patch.
Yeah, in game number 1, we did have that Jinx ban come out from Wildcard Developmental side. Game number 2, it just slipped by the draft completely. Vex was happy going right after that Ezreal pick. And then we saw that very unorthodox bot lane that was drafted from Wildcard Developmental. So we're just waiting for this last ban to come in from Winthrop. It is going to be the Lucian banned away, so this will leave up that Jinx that we were talking about earlier.
Not to mention, there's still Ashe available. Senna is still very powerful and also available as well. It's a question of whether or not they have anybody on either team that are capable and willing to take champions like that. Senna seems like a Vex champion. I feel like Vex just like farming up souls for like 15-20 minutes sounds pretty much like what he does on Ezreal for the most part, just without the mobility. With a lot more range potential and a lot more damage potential. But that doesn't matter because the Jinx goes into his back pocket because there's nothing remaining really that's going to be all that punishing to it unless Urison's got something in the back pocket that's special, whether you go back to Seraphine or, again, you pick up the Ashe or the Senna yourself. Or biggest one in my mind and across the world right now is the Xayah. The lethality Xayah has actually been a direct lane counter in most games or in most regions to what the Jinx is bringing inside of the laning phase.
And Vex on this Jinx, if you've watched any of the Proving Ground Circuit qualifiers, Open qualifiers, especially in the first qualifier that we had, where Winthrop came all the way from being the last seed and just breaking through to the entire tournament to get a top 4 finish. A lot of this was off of Vex and his ability to pilot Jinx in the mid game and position well to get excited, get the kills, get the resets, and get Winthrop a victory. So it's very comfortable in his hands. The response out of Wildcard, however, will be Seraphine and Leona.
Yeah, I think about lane that they're going to end up running here to try to salvage what happens up against the Leona or against the Jinx on the bottom side of the map. They've got great engage. They've got a lot of range to work with now too, especially to work with inside of a team fight or going for pick tools because the Solar Flare, the Encore, they're both massive range tools to engage with. Kenji actually goes to his Thresh, which is like a famous champion for Kenji. It's one of his best from way back in the day. And so I'm excited to see that one back when he was still around inside of like, I think it was Scouting Grounds and such. He was really known for his Thresh play at the support role. So I'm excited to see what that one is. Although as a counter to the Leona, you're not doing anything to deny the Solar Flare unless you're positioning very defensively. So you do have to be a little bit careful where you're putting yourself inside of a game. Kenji is going to get tested a bit with that, kind of defensive posturing. If it's too much, Leona goes in with her body, and if it's not far enough, then all of a sudden the solar flare goes down, the encore goes down, and then you're just kind of stuck in place.
The main thing you really can counter is that Zenith Blade with the Flay. You can get the timing with that. It's enough of a wind-up to be able to consistently predict that one. But with these ultimates picked up by Wildcard Developmental so far, the response out of Winthrop is grabbing the Silas. And yeah, those are some pretty big engage ultimates that Ivano is going to be acquiring off of those picks from Wildcard.
It is, and in the first game, I believe this was, or no, my apologies, second game, this was banned out from Wildcard Developmental because they knew not only is Ivano good at the Silas, but also, again, you don't want to hand him a bunch of ultimates that are going to be incredibly valuable, and the Encore is one of the big ones. The Encore is a very, very good tool defensively or offensively to utilize inside of the confines of a fight. So it'd be nice also if you could throw a diver into it, because that's somebody to bounce the Encore off of eventually for a big team fight. But you can see Dot goes back to the Graves, which is the comfortable matchup that he had in the previous game that really did kind of just make sure to set his feet, not get bullied around by Mabud, who is one of the better performers on the side of Winthrop most of the time. Got clamped off a little bit in the last game. Now has a chance at a counter pick, which I think is a lot more impactful and potentially leads to a much worse landing phase for Dot this time.
So for Wildcard, they've grabbed a frontline engage. You do have that Enchanter you can flex around, as well as the Graves being put in. Provides some pretty in-your-face aggression. How do we round out this composition for Wildcard to deal with what Winthrop have so far? What are going to be the final picks right here for the mid lane and whatever else Wildcard are looking to?
I wouldn't be surprised if they got a jungle pick here immediately, and whether or not it's the Xin Zhao, whether it's the Hakram, something like that. Maniac has plenty of options to go for to start with, and I think you need to hold your final pick unless you're really adamant about being able to flex Graves into like the jungle position and the top position, and you're wanting a better matchup for Dot, just to make sure that that's going to go through. I feel like you have to hold potentially the mid lane position, although you have information that it's Silas, so unless you give something that like top lane is going to be good, you probably can counterpick your mid laner. So it's a question of whether or not you want to wait and see what the composition entails to make sure your mid laner is going to fit exactly what you're looking to tailor your comp for, or do you take a priority jungler here because you banned one out and because also you don't care about the Graves information because obviously you weren't going to flex it in the first place.
Right, so instead of the Xin Zhao switching over to the Viego, saw how effective that can be. Again, it's a champion that can snowball and carry from the jungle role. Winthrop University, however, are hovering the Hecarim for the moment being. Already ran this earlier. Frost Forest, trying it in the last game that we saw, wasn't able to have those impactful engages, so going to swap it up this time, going for the Olaf in response to the Viego.
Was kind of hoping actually to see this paired with something incredibly wonky like a Soraka or something like that, because it's always my favorite. I know no team likes to rock that in the jungle mid positions with Blaze and Griffin, and I know Frost Forest is definitely somebody who would love to be in the receiving end of that type of pocket healing is the Olaf here. And now the response also to the Graves in the top lane is the Gangplank. Mabud wants damage, wants wave clear, wants everything in the back pocket to be able to work with, which is kind of incredible to think about that he's willing to put the team on a bit more of his back. But again, it's a lot of a scaling composition. The other side, they go to Rise that late into the composition. Feels weird to pick Rise that late. Oh, actually, okay. If this is set in stone, this could be of interest.
This is set in stone. Okay, so it's Rise in the top side. Onat will be on the Graves this time.
Huh.
Interesting little mix-up here. I mean, the carry potential out of Onat that we saw from the Zeri, not exactly the most copy-paste thing you can do with the Graves, but it's still early game aggression, at least.
I think it's a matter of Onat now, or I guess Dot in this position, actually had the Graves as the potential pick loaded for top lane. And when you see the Gangplank, you need something that's like, okay, you're not going to outmatch his wave clear. He's going to scale better than you. It's almost impossible for a Graves to just get a solo kill in the laning phase up against a Gangplank. But now you put him against a melee champion, and all of a sudden, all of those things are a little bit better. Now you're a ranged champion with multiple forms of wave clear into a Silas to shut him out of the earlier stage of the game. And the response top is the Rise, because he has the wave clear to match what the barrels are going to accomplish. It's actually a pretty cool swap. Wildcard was able to make happen. I agree. I think Onat not being on something that's going to have the same carry potential might be harmful, but at minimum, it does help salvage the lanes that could have been pretty bad, given that Winthrop set them up quite nicely.
So this should be an interesting one, based off of Mabud's performance that we've seen in the past off his Gangplank. Pulling it up right now specifically for the UPL, he has been dominant on this when he has pulled it out. He's pulled it out against Harrisburg as well as the University of North America Dragons, and each time it was devastating. 14.0 KDA, 10.0 KDA, and not a single death on him. It's a competent champion in his hands. I'm glad to see that too, because in the Proving Grounds he's going against someone who's very, very well known for their Gangplank over in that tournament. So we'll see what this Gangplank can bring to the battlefield against this matchup of Rise's Dot. Sit it back for Dot's Rise.
It's a matter of, I think Mabud's actually in a fine position. I know you match the wave clear as Rise, and you can actually go for a lot tankier over Rise, so it's a little bit easier to kill. It's like a side lane matchup that works well, but you do not have the global pressure in the top lane that Rise really wants with like the mid lane Realm Warp that you would normally be looking for. You have to burn a teleport, and again, that means that Mabud's ultimates are going to be all the more impactful. Not to mention, you tag Rise with a slow, and the trade damage can be there relatively easily in an auto-attacking battle, especially one where like the Rise has a single route and you have an orange to prevent that on the side of Mabud. Feels like the trading can get very aggressive and very hot and heavy to start off the laning phase, and that the Gangplank can kind of capitalize from there, especially if Frost Force wants to get a little bit frisky on the top side of the map as well, alongside everything. And if you think about also that Winthrop's like, their bottom lane is set up to be self-sufficient, and the opposing bottom lane really hasn't given them a lot of threat, which means top side is where a lot of our focus is going to be going, and that's where like Frost Force is on Olaf. You have like a really good skirmisher in the Silas, and you have this powerful Gangplank to work with that if he gets an advantage over the Rise, the game starts to look really difficult to play for Wildcard. I really love the way that the draft actually turned out for Winthrop, even though the lanes are better after the swap.
Then where are the areas of attack for Wildcard Developmental if they want to stop this composition from coming online? Looking around, Leona, great engager, can work well as a dive buddy. If you do want to punish Mabud and shove that lane in with Dot on this Rise, Diego and Leona diving that together as a three-piece could be quite effective.
Yeah, I think the two places that you want to attack most, number one, breaking Snow out. I don't think there's much threat onto the Seraphine, as long as you're not just like standing way too far up and Sir Kenji is hitting you with hooks or anything like that, or getting flashed on in the midst of the laning phase. And with the exhaust, even once, if that does happen, you burn the exhaust on the opposition, and that means that probably flashes have to be burnt on everybody in order to get anything to continue in that sense. So I think Yurason's fine in the bottom lane, especially, I was hoping that D-mats were taken. I love D-mats on pretty much any mage, and especially ones that like, you have a really good command of the wave because you just completely control command of the wave. That's not the case here for Yurason. But your point that Snow getting out and about, I think, is really big because you need more setup for Viego than what these lanes currently bring. You have one route in top lane. You have no hard CC in the bottom or in the mid lane. And bottom lane, you've got quite a load of it, which is why also I think fighting around neutral objectives is huge. I'd kind of like to see a full swap from this team towards the Rift Herald at 8 minutes in an attempt to snag that one away while they have an opportunity to use all these big AoE tools the team should have readily available for themselves by that 8-minute mark.
He's determined to get that last Q in onto Dot over there. As we head into this game number 3, again, this is week number 6 of 7. Winthrop are already secured to make it to playoffs. They're just trying to secure that number 1, trying to lock in that number 1. Still fighting has been Wildcard Developmental. 2 and 3 right now in series. They've already picked up a win against Winthrop University, stopping an 11-game win streak. A boost of morale for them, but still an uphill battle as they head into this game number 3, trying to get their playoffs contention in line.
One influential game that this actually turned out to, or an influential series that this actually ended up turning out to be, given the fact that, like, we weren't even expecting to be here, obviously. Once again, when it comes to games like getting changed up on us, this was one we expected necessarily to jump into. But given that we are now seeing Wildcard Developmental be so competitive and try to fight off for a playoff spot, make sure that Winthrop doesn't go undefeated, and they have to stay honest in their final week. Because again, if they win right here, it means that almost certainly there is no way to actually compete with them if you are Harrisburg. So they just take the number 1 seed. And you know that Winthrop wants to fight now rather than having to fight next week as well. So both these teams have quite a bit to play for. It's leading to very competitive games that I don't think I was expecting quite the level of just a competitiveness inside of.
Wildcard Developmental. What can you really say? Every time they try and develop a new roster, this org's been really good about getting new talent online and doing their best to make sure they can get them towards the next state. trying to get them towards, Wildcard Aces roster, the Wildcard main roster, into the Proving Grounds and whatnot.
So the big thing for Wildcard for me is that a lot of times they kind of build their main roster around one or two really good youngsters and then kind of fill veterans around it. And so it's about proving in the Wildcard system, I see, that you're worthy of that kind of thing from coming through. And so again, when I walked into a game like this, you're looking at like Dot and Onat and players that have been around for a while, even Snow too, as being players to potentially build the foundation of the next team onto. And I think, again, showing off like this actually is really good for that.
Ghost popped in the top lane as they try and get Dot. Now stunning up Vex as Yurasan. No trade's going to be happening, but summoner spells will be burnt over in the top side. Dot, Frost Force attempted gank. Ghost does have the shorter cooldown. As Sir Kenji in the bottom lane will pull in Snow, but goes low in the process. Vex gets Snow down to about 200 health. No one going down just yet.
Exhaust necessary right there, actually coming out from Yurasan. And Vex had waited for a moment because I think he was anticipating an exhaust from coming through. Threw a couple of autos at Snow before cleansing that exhaust off, and it kind of bought enough time for Snow to be able to walk out of that situation almost unexpectedly. His brush is warded, which sucks for Kenji, because I don't know if Kenji knows that or not. I'm assuming Kenji has to know that, given the minions might have been interacting with him, but this is a situation where, like, again, you burnt so many of the summoner spells, it's just flashes on the two ADs. Both junglers should be maybe looking for bottom side, because again, the gank setup on both sides is quite nice to work with.
Slow game to start off right here. Frost Forest clearing towards his Raptors now as Onat begins to push in, and that is a lane we're going to be looking at time and time again, because that was a measure of success for Wildcard Developmental. It was the area that they really pivoted off of. We'll see if Onat can still have that same level of impact that he had. It's not going to be, again, as we said during Champs Luck, it's not going to be that carry potential like the Zeri, but it can be something that gets Wildcard a foot in towards this early game, gets them some control and priority over towards this mid wave. Make potential plays like they're setting up right now, where they have Maniac over towards the Drake.
Yeah, they've got 4 members actually over towards the Drake, capable of posturing. There's a bit of vision in the river that it looks like actually is there without any information about it being there from Winthrop University. You can see they're actually trying to make a play on Onat to break this lane back out for Ivano.
Collateral damage taken. Ivano holding on to that. The burst of damage is going to be used to clear out the wave and get priority. Now Frost Forest, Kenji moving towards Drake's side. You still have Snow and Maniac over there. Going to be enough to dissuade Wildcard Developmental to grab the scuttle. Will be picked up by Winthrop. No grab on the Drake just yet. Pressure over on this top side as Dot is going for the dive onto my bud. Pop some oranges. Now the engage coming out from Wildcard. Can't get close enough. Level 4 Snow. No Solar Flare available just yet.
I actually really love what Winthrop was looking at right there, because they wanted to break out Ivano and then walk into the river and potentially look to fight. But again, not only is this playing into Wildcard's win condition, actually Onat's looking at the solo for Ivano. Thankfully, the Ignite doesn't really get him all that much, and it's Grave, so he has to stay within melee range, and so Ivano burns the flash and just get out. But Ivano was down to no mana, basically, and so there was no way a fight was going to come through. Vex also got shoved in by Yurasan and Snow, who, again, when it comes to the Seraphine, she's got a ridiculous amount of wave clear to start the game, because you got 2 full AoE abilities, and the passive to double one of those also hurts quite a bit versus an ADC, even one like a Jinx that has this big AoE to work with. And so Vex was stuck underneath the tower, and you had no AP or no mana actually in the back pocket of Ivano. So while I appreciate like the breakout in the usage and trying to shift towards the dragon, the forethought of being able to bail on a play like that was a lot better, and it meant that like nobody has taken the dragon. Wildcard Developmental will end up getting pushed back in on the bottom side, and it allows a back timer for Ivano as well, which so is like ultimately are all positive things for Winthrop. That like they wanted the dragon, they wanted the big play, but ultimately these are the little things that build up to a good game, is being able to reset bot wave, being able to get a good reset for your mid laner on time.
And Winthrop will have a lot of control towards this bottom side. You can see the level difference kind of kicking in here. Vex, being level 6 right now, has the rocket. Level 6 for Frost Forest as well. They want to start contending towards this dragon side. Olaf fights pretty well around these neutral objectives. It's a lot of life steal the lower he is. Attacks faster the lower he is, so a big threat to fight over there. But Frost Force will play towards this Rift Herald instead. Ivano trying to clear out the wave, get some control. Frost Force only clearing out the ward there. Now Ivano and Onat walking together. Kenji was faster on the reset. So he will be able to show up with Vex.
This is kind of exactly what I want. The only problem I have is not level 6 for Snow, so I kind of want to see Midwave get siphoned right here, but everybody is here actually from the side of Wildcard Developmental. This is exactly what you're looking for.
A sidestep coming out from Wildcard Developmental, and they're going to collapse onto Ivano. Ivano falls, so will fall Frost Force, and now my bud walking right out of this one. Wildcard Developmental to get the 2 first kills of the game, setting up for the Rift Herald.
Things got kicked off with an ultimate coming through from Ivano, and he and Frost Force are just so anti to get fighting right here and right now. But again, Wildcard are the ones that look so much better when they're able to put a lot of their pieces together, because apart, again, a Graves is like menacing, but he's not that menacing. A Rise is kind of menacing at the beginning, but not that menacing. But you put them together with champions that have engage, that have frontline, that have CC to lock them down. And a Viego gets so much more threatening. A Graves gets so much more threatening. A setup is there for Rise to hit multiple targets or focus one target down with one massive long chain of abilities, and because of this, that's when they're really threatening towards the side of Winthrop. And so the two go in, end up finding themselves at the bad end of a trade, and I love that Wildcard actually listened to exactly what needed to happen, because again, this team is so much better than the sum of their parts when they're playing as a group, and they went right for that 8-minute shift right into Rift Herald, and unfortunately Winthrop kind of baited themselves into it as well. They've got the Olaf, but they aren't ready for that fight.
Oh, my bud going for the kill onto Dot, flashes away, Orange's 8. Will not go for the chase. So yeah, so far so good for Wildcard Developmental. I want to point out that Onat really reading that Solar Flare timing with the quick draw, hops out before Ivano can land it really onto anything, and it was just that counter engage that was crisp from Wildcard Developmental. Still, however, though, it will be Winthrop utilizing this mid lane control, utilizing this bot lane control to give them an easy window onto this dragon, as they will grab the first Drake of the game. It's Infernal.
And it's so interesting, Eric, because I know you cast enough League of Legends to have an opinion on this, but I oftentimes see this as being like the dichotomy of what is current League of Legends at pretty much all levels, which is the trade-off of, do you give first 2 dragons or do you get the first 2 Rift Heralds? And is that gold value enough? Because for most teams, if you use it properly, you should be up somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 gold, maybe even a little bit further. And you can take that and expand it into more advantage over the course of the game, but ultimately you shouldn't be expecting anything more than on average about 3,000 gold, somewhere in there. And then you start fighting around 3rd dragon, right? So it's a question of what your preference is, because I always like to see the team that has the gold advantage, because they seem to find ways, especially here in Amateur, to make that like stretch even further than what 2,000 or 3,000 gold should feel like against opposition. I don't know whether you have a preference for like the gold advantage or the dragon stacking.
It's hard to say for me, Dean, because in some cases, especially in Amateur, you have these squads who are really good at losing a lot in the early. I'm going to point out ISU of all teams. I got to point them out. Who just basically can feed for the entire first half of the game and be like, all right, you guys have a gold lead. It's time for us to cash in on these objective bounties. And then, yeah, you know, you can get some interesting ways to get back in the game if you have a scaling comp in those scenarios. I don't know, it poises interesting points, as interesting as this fight is over here in the top lane. Dot taking the wrong way back home, gets caught out by the death sentence. My bud will pick up that kill.
Yeah, the mid tower getting cracked pretty heavily here from Winthrop, but not quite going down. And the setup is actually going back into the pockets of Winthrop onto their top lane, where Mabud, this gangplank is going to be really crucial for getting them into the later stages. Ivano's taking so much damage. He's going down here.
Oh, he couldn't even put down the ultimate in time. Snow too fast. The lockdown that comes in from Viona, too good. Another kill picked up for Wildcard.
Easy enough. And a couple of plates going into Mabud, and I like the defensive top side, just making sure that Mabud is going to be in a good place, because again, I feel like this gangplank is the real decision maker, or the real scaling threat, alongside the Jinx that makes this game so terrifying for Wildcard Developmental. But again, it's been pretty slow to start things off. It's just the 1 kill now off the back of that gank. And so far, Ivano has been kind of put in the dirt off the back of Snow's roaming, which we talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, Ivano just kind of brutalized. Thanks to that roaming you were talking about, and Onat just being a good follow-up, being a good player, constantly pushing him in. Just looking at the plates, 4 plates gone in that mid lane. It's been a pretty rough lane for Ivano to have to deal with. Now, looking at the objectives that we have available, still 2 minutes before the Drake does spawn, so plays will be towards towers. We got another minute before going down. Will be those tower plates. Winthrop are going to put their pressure towards this bottom lane. Ivano still has that ultimate. It was picked up earlier from Snow, the Solar Flare. They're looking to set up an engage. Wildcard might be wiser to it as they're sending some resources down there as well.
Seems like Winthrop on both sides of the map is doing comfortably. Their bottom lane is currently ahead 36 CS, has a couple of plates off the bottom tower. Top tower has a plate off of it, as well as the kill in the back pocket of Mabud. And so, at some point, again, the biggest problem here is that in the previous game, the Zeri was consistently grouping with the rest of the team to just constantly find these engagements. But so far, Onat hasn't really moved all that much on the Graves. And so it is... I'm not going to say it's detrimental to have the Graves like with the gold advantage in this particular game. But what it means is that it's not being kind of spread about the same way that the previous one was, where the Zeri was like this big team fighter and that was kind of their whole idea. It's harder to use the Graves in exactly the same way. And so you can see that Wildcard Developmental, they're not able to push this advantage that they've got any further than what they have it at right now, than some of the like mid lane pressure that they've translated it into. And that's buying more time for both the Gangplank and the Jinx to scale later into the game. And again, I have my problems with what the Rise and the Graves are going to be able to accomplish in the later stages, even when you've got good long-range engage from the Seraphine and from the Leona to be able to work with.
We are heading 25 seconds until the next dragon spawns. If we could, I would like to see where the gold is, as we're not too shy off from another fight breaking out. Which means we got to take stock of what resources are going to be available. Mabud has been cashing in quite well over on that top end. Unfortunately, it's showing the champions from the last split, but player names are still fine on that end. You can see Onat has been taking in quite a bit of resources. So has Vex, and that's why Maniac is going to go right after him, chase him down, leave him down. Solar Flare going down in the mid lane. Maniac, will he be able to escape? He gets his ultimate stolen and his heart stolen as well. Will go down in that bottom lane. Now the pressure from Wildcard, though, is going to get them an inner in the mid.
Yeah, it definitely is a much better trade now for Wildcard because they get both Mabud off the map, which is somebody that could be collecting gold or trying to put pressure somewhere else on the map with the cannon barrage, anywhere. And the trade-off of kills, of course, you get one back in the pocket of Silas, which is great, but you also lost Jinx during that trade, and the exchange was for, again, one kill under your Silas, which just isn't as worth it as you would want it to be. Not to mention, mid-inner tower carries more gold with it. They carry the Rift Herald with it. It carries a lot more map control with it when it comes to being able to ward and set up for some of the team fights that you're looking for on the side of Wildcard Developmental. Everything that they wanted feels like it came about from just this one trade of plays. And now, second Dragon goes to Winthrop. That's great. They're scaling towards later stages, like you said. You think about the ISU angle of being able to kind of limit what is being lost during the first bits of the game, and then come back off the back of like a catch-up timers and being able to utilize like the scaling that a dragon brings to your advantage. But here, Wildcard Developmental don't want to play that style. Instead, they're the ones that want to accelerate the gold and say, we are going to win this game before you even have a chance to get to a position where you can beat us.
Ooh, a little bit of bait being dangled right here with Mabud's Gangplank. Frost joins the fight. Realm Warp's going to be used, but he gets out in time. There's no form of crowd control between Mabud and Frost Forest.
The only type of crowd control is the only one that could have stopped him, which was death. And unfortunately, there just wasn't enough damage. It seemed like Mabud pulled completely out of that situation. They weren't prepared for the Realm Warp. As he had stepped away, then had to step back in range for the barrel setup to come through and end up hitting him. And they didn't even actually get a second barrel out in time to be able to punish Dot on his way out of that situation. That might have been enough damage alongside a passive to maybe bring him down. But that's even just like... that's speculation at this point. Best case scenario. Dot, very forward thinking. That was incredibly quick to be like, oh, Olaf is here, but Gangplank's out of range, so I'm just going to ult out of here. And there's really not all that much that Frost Force is going to be able to do about it.
And then back to the same state. Mabud down there. Dot going to meet him down there. One of the things you always got to really appreciate about the Gangplank is you tend to be one of the highest damage per minutes top laners when you do take this champion. Thanks to both your late game scaling and the fact that you can have an impact anywhere on the map with your ultimate. Mabud's always going to have that little bit of an advantage when we do have potential team fights looking to break out over here. He can be more effective faster before channeling that teleport. And Dot wants to be effective right now as he puts some damage onto Mabud underneath his own tower.
Yeah, it's actually been rather impressive from Dot, who's been able to put on a lot more damage. I was expecting this to go better for the Gangplank than it has been, but Mabud doesn't have any magic resist quite yet. Dot has really gone on the first itemization, even in the second itemization territory before anything big has come through from Mabud, who right now has the Essence Reaver and probably end up going for a bit of the lethality or going for... I have to assume it is probably going to end up being lethality if it's not going to be crit. with the Caulfield's Warhammer. I have to assume lethality coming through. So we'll wait and see what Maba decides to go for. Again, third item, fourth item, the Gangplank really starts to be able to side lane even effectively against the Rise, but right now, Dot is just taking everything in as he can go, as the Rise in the side lane is just feeling much more influential through what the Gangplank has been. We haven't even found a good moment, really, for the Cannon Barrage to be used so far. My bad, I feel like that cooldown's been up pretty much the entire game. Might have been burnt once or twice for fights, but you would have wanted to use it a lot more than what it has been this game. It hasn't been on cooldown nearly enough for my taste here.
It's just no real method of attack that's working for Winthrop.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to set up something. You see them playing with their lane states, you see them playing with vision, but no window of opportunity is being led through Wildcard. They just have way better skirmishing at this stage of the game. They've been really successful, a lot of it off of snow. This bloodthirsty Leona 301 right now, who's been engaging on a dime, and follow-up has been so far pristine from Wildcard Developmental. Just good control in the early stages of this game. Still got 35 seconds before Baron spawns. No one really going to go after that. Not too much damage afforded for a sneaky one. Wildcard Developmental having control of the map. Minute and 10 seconds before the next Drake comes down. Winthrop would set themselves up at Soul Point if they were able to get that. Wildcard Developmental are the ones with control and priority towards that Drake side nonetheless.
We might be the luckiest pair in the world to be able to get a very long-distance game here, just because of how much that both these teams are looking into the late game as being the big possibility. It seems like Wildcard are the ones accelerating, but they're not doing it very fast in a game like this. And they haven't been able to find a pure team fight that could really kind of change the pace of how everything is going to be going in this game. And especially with two dragons over to the side of Winthrop, even if Wildcard kind of owns the map and gets the ability to go for the next 3, that's 15 minutes after, I guess, technically 10 minutes after the 30 seconds passes here. So we're waiting for at least the 30-minute mark before the third dragon has been taken, and all of a sudden we have a 5-minute timer for the next rift for the dragon soul that ends up coming through. So both these teams could end up in a state where the game gets very quiet unless somebody decides to make an incredibly bold move around a dragon or a baron. And this is actually a pretty bold statement from Winthrop, because they're moving all 5 of their members into the bottom river to compete for their third dragon.
Setting up right here, Winthrop the faster to get the inside track. Now the engage looking to go through, looking to get onto iKing Vex, but he flashes away in time. Winthrop not getting the engage they were looking for. Same thing from Wildcard Developmental. Looking for the ultimate to grab the encore. Available, looking to jump in is Snow, locking down my bud. My bud backs out, gets a barrel, survives. Snow falls. Onat too low to continue fighting. Dot sacrifice. 2 kills for Winthrop. Reward Drake.
Yeah, they get control of bottom river with this double teleport. It's a very risky attempt, just trying to say, okay, we're going to put our foot down and we are going to own the third dragon. Because now, best case scenario, it's 15 minutes, right? Like, you end up at the 36-minute mark, that they could let Wildcard just have the next 3 dragons and not worry about it, because then the last 5-minute timer puts us at 40 minutes rather than anything else before the next real fight comes through for Wildcard and Winthrop that is forced between the two to make sure one of them doesn't get a pretty massive soul here. And so, the Wildcard, they actually fight their way in, because again, they're comfortable with the way that this composition looks inside of the 5-on-5, but they burnt so much at the front end of that fight and burnt so many summoner spells. They should have realized that really they could have walked up to Baron and probably taken that one off the board, because they've got the Graves and they've got the Viego and the Rise for consistent damage, and there wasn't much to be said about that from Winthrop, because like, what are they going to do? They're going to run directly from Dragon all the way up to Baron and potentially try to take it away. It felt like that was a bit of a stretch, but instead go kind of infringing upon the territory that was held by Ivano. He had the encore in the back pocket, and it let them really create this concave that prevented Wildcard from accomplishing anything they were looking to right there.
Intense from Winthrop so far. This gives me shades of Circuit Qualifiers #1, which was against Wildcard's main team.
Yes.
Winthrop getting a reverse sweep in that one. A lot of that off the back of iKing Vex's Jinx. He popped off in that one. His positioning in that last fight is allowing him to get into that position that we saw earlier. Goodness gracious, my bud. Oh, I was not expecting that to go down as fast as it did. You were talking about the side laning earlier of my bud getting into that healthy state. I think he's arrived.
Yes, so no additional armor was purchased from Dot. Instead, he finished out the Fimbulwinter for some additional health, and yes, he has, I think, an additional cloth armor. The problem is, Mabud has now finished the Prowler's Claw, which is the best lethality item just for everything that you could possibly want it for, and it's a lot of penetration through the armor.
There we go, a dive coming out.
It's here.
Wildcard Developmental looking to get onto Ivano. Mono popping the Hourglass will be safe, will be fine. Wildcard Developmental backing off, but look at the pressure from Winthrop in the bot lane.
Yeah, it's just off the back of Mabud, who also, by the way, carrying the double crit cloak. We love the quick cloak type of gameplay here, just because of how much crit and how much damage that it gives you, on top of what the Essence Reaver already does with the same exact itemization. Oh, Dad, you're crazy!
Oh, he gets locked down, though, and Frost Force is there. Janitorial duty. Vex from the mid lane. Landsafe Flush denies Frost that assist.
It's really, really hilarious because specifically Onat dodged the cleaver so that he could have a potential way out, and if he hadn't dodged the cleaver and just tanked it, he probably gives the kill to Frost Forest instead of giving it to Vex. But the worst timeline instead comes in where he dodges that hatchet, is just another step or two further back, and that means that the rocket hits, which is just a gorgeous shot coming in from Vex to punish the topside dive. I thought he was going to die, honestly, to Ivano underneath the tower, but clearly, with the Collector, incredibly powerful. But again, trading your life like that, not ideal when the gold advantage was in your favor only moments ago. Now Winthrop, all of a sudden, they're commanding a near to, or like over 1,000 gold lead, and they're the ones with the 3 dragons, Eric. This is not a place you want to be if you're a wild card, because all of a sudden the 5-on-5 is going to be thrust upon you in only a couple of minutes. 1.5 minutes, in fact, to be quite precise with exactly when that timer is going to show up for them to have to win a fight or end up losing a very large amount in this game.
And this is wildcard territory. This is where wildcard fight best. Once they get towards this mid game, they're already starting to get their carries online. Iking Vex 2-1-1. I've been calling him Iking Vex a lot this cast. I have no idea why I'm going back to the past, but the only Vex is what we'll go back to. But yeah, he's been popping off so far. 2-1-1. Does have that shutdown goal just waiting to be picked up. 275 CS. He is farming up a Storm, D.
Yeah, Team Gates Vex is always a good thing to see when it comes to scaling for the later stages of the game. It's one of the best things that we got to see him do back in the Challenger Series. So a little bit of nostalgia. You keep calling him my King Vex. We've seen him for so long inside of UPL, just like bouncing between teams. It's kind of nice, again, to see him on a consistent team like this and to become a lot more of a, well, it looks like somebody who can put the team on his back, a lot more of a leader for Winthrop. It's kind of nice. This is a different look for Vex that we hadn't really seen for a couple of years for him. So you giving him a little bit of a throwback is just, it's kind of a reference to the fact that he's a long-standing player, even though he is a lot different, I would consider, from what he was back in the day. Barenbuff actually kicks off really heavily. There's a little information because I think they killed a ward, but I don't know how much urgency they have to stop this, especially because it's down to 3,500 health.
Spicy call. Maniac looking to get over the wall, goes for the steal, doesn't able to get it. Vex is the one who secures the Drake, popping him off with a bomb. It's not going to land. The rocket goes wide. Snow comes in with the Zenith, but the flash away from Vex will keep him alive. He's still taking the far route, but thanks to Winthrop regrouping, they're going to be sure that Vex will be safe. Baron picked up for Winthrop University.
And the trade-off, of course, is that the Dragon is going to go over, so they do deny the soul point, but goodness gracious, the amount that you can actually pull off the map in terms of gold from Winthrop's side. Now you're going to be getting top inner tower, because nobody's actually come here to stop this, and both mid towers are up as well. Oh, this is
Oh, man. I absolutely love this call. They know that Wildcard Developmental is going over for the Drake. They're going to deny the soul. So Winthrop say, screw it. We'll go right for the top lane and take that tower there. But they're also going to get Onat. Now, Ivano has the ultimate taking away from Yerson. This is just Siege CD waiting to happen from Winthrop.
Yeah, they've got 3 members that are going to be shifting now into the mid lane. They're going to be able to grab the mid-outer tower, maybe the mid-inner tower off the back of it as well, because Onat is dabbed, like you had said. And the Baron buff, their wave clear is pretty much exclusively Dot, who's actually backing in his own base right now, not able to stop anything. I know it's very difficult. Just got the Frozen Heart, which is probably the reason why he needed to go for a full back. Doesn't want to get one shot anymore by the likes of Mabud, but what a turnaround for this game, because only minutes ago, Wildcard was actually sitting at a gold advantage, looking like they had the superior position right before that last dragon. In fact, it was like 6 minutes ago or something that we were looking at Wildcard to be like in command of the game. But slowly over time, after the back of that fight, off the back of that third dragon, and now off the back of a Baron take, basically completely invisible for Wildcard Developmental, a huge shift in the gold value of a game like this has led to 6,000 gold in favor of Winthrop University, where the two members that have been the beneficiary, of course, Vex and Mabud, are the massive late game scaling champions for this team. They're going to cause so much strife. It's very difficult to interact with Jinx without landing something like the Encore, something like the Solar Flare coming out from Snow. And again, if you're infringing upon that territory, if you're able to close that gap, you still have to be terrified of barrels coming out from Mad Bud, because you know he's going to be dropping a lot of damage with those.
I mean, both of those carries you just talked about, Dean, 3 items completed. One thing wildcard, if they're tracking flash timers, Vex doesn't have his flash right now. Maniac's going after Vex. He will take down Vex, but my bud is still alive. My bud gets low. My bud will take 1, and now the death sentence coming in. Grabs Dot. My bud takes down Dot. Snow running away, but Ivano has his ultimate. He wants to find Donut. He will not get him. The solar flare comes back down onto him, and there's the smoke screen. Ivano predicts wrong. Onat to the side. Ivano gets dropped, but Winthrop are dropping structures. They're going after the inhibitors, Dean.
The fight was pretty much over from minute 1. Mabud, how did you sneak in a barrel chain? Just landed on the backline and did 90% of their health. They were dead on arrival to that fight. And yes, it did lead to more members going into the side of Winthrop and finding a kill onto Vex, which I think neutered this push at least a little bit. But look how much they got even without Vex. They got 2 full inhibitors and multiple kills off the back of that 1 barrel chain coming up from Mabud. What a hero play from the top laner, who again, this is really the first split that a lot of people have seen of in full action together. Has just been this spring split, has developed great since the fall when he first made a debut for Winthrop, and slowly he's become one of the best top laners that we've actually seen inside of the amateur space.
Oh, that low cooldown is working against Frost as the super mega death rocket comes in. Vex will grab another kill. It's going to be at the cost of Frost Forest, though. All things considered, it's a 1-for-1. Wildcard Developmental will take it.
Absolutely, especially because the only tool that is remaining to challenge onto the backline really is the Encore. And given that, like, outside of that, I know that Yurasan is probably still very effective with, like, the 3 items that you got, but you are... we've got a Flame Horizon at just the ADC position. In terms of gold alone, you could see just how powerful that Vex is in a game like this. That ultimate actually saves Dot's life, which is quite nice, but... The important bit here is I think they really just want to set their top wave to be pushing out on the side of Winthrop, because they're just waiting for the next dragon. They've got 1 minute, and there's no way the inhibitors are going to be back up. The waves are going to be pushed insanely by then. Dot is your primary wave clear, and again, this isn't really like the high AP Rise. This is like the tank Rise, which doesn't have as much, has quite a bit, don't get me wrong. Graves has got quite a bit as well, but it's harder to push out.
Going after Vex, my bud puts down the barrel. Keep a close eye on that barrel. Burst of damage onto Maniac. Able to get away will be my bud. Thanks to the lantern. Returns damage. Vex is able to get 1. And now here comes the fight from Ivano. Ivano tries to get to the snare. He runs low. 4 members of Wildcard all around him. They take down Ivano. But here comes the Ragnarok. And here comes my bud. Dot tries to put down the damage. The Rune Prison will not be enough as he's flayed back into the party of Winthrop. The wall does work, and so do the barrels. But Dot returns fire. Kenji versus Dot. Kenji finally able to sentence Dot to death, and the ace goes through. It was a tough fight from Wildcard, but Winthrop get it.
Yeah, and they've got minions on the base. That's just going to be the game right then and right there. Winthrop, they looked at the beginning of this game like things were going way too slowly, like things might not actually get to where they need to be, but the Dragon taking in a couple of fights just here and there, and you can see just how powerful, how tangible each item is in terms of the strength for Mudbud and Vex, but specifically for these barrel chains that have been coming through. Frost Forest, I think, has to bail. 3 full members have respawned, so it's not going to quite be the end of the game yet for Winthrop, even though it was very, very close. But goodness gracious, fights like that, I mean, you know that the game is not looking particularly good for Wildcard when everybody is getting blown to smithereens by Madbud's barrels.
I want to point this out right now. Vex did not burn his flash in that last fight. I believe it's just coming off cooldown. Did not burn his stopwatch. Both of those are going to be available for the next fight. Hopes are just dwindling down for Wildcard to get an engage on that priority target.
Infinity Edge completed now for Madbud as well. You have a 4th item that's going to be completed likely after a Baron take coming through from Winthrop University. They've got the Hextech Soul in their back pocket. Ivano is just going to it. I thought Ivano was going to go immediately and just try to assassinate Viego, but it didn't end up being the case. Instead, he was just catching him on his way out with that portal to ensure that they have control of this Baron side jungle, or at least more control of the Baron side jungle. Bottom wave and mid wave are still both being pushed in by the inhibitor, and that means that, again, Baron is very open for whichever, for the side of Winthrop who have more than enough team fighting damage to be able to take something like this.
Oh! My bud, what the hell was that? He just destroys Maniac! and now the jungler's not there. Winthrop could go for the Baron, but I think they just want the win. Right after Yurson, pulling him in, Ivano takes him down. The solar flare has been stolen. Snow heads for the hills, Dot heads for the grave, and Onat heads for the respawn. Gets a parting barrel as a gift goodbye. The Nexus exposed. Winthrop University take the series 2-1.
See, now, this isn't exactly the fastest of games, but this is what I expect a lot more from Winthrop when it comes to games against teams like Wildcard, where it's like, okay, this is supposed to be dominant. It's pretty dominant. Like, they knew what they needed to do. They won the game from the middle and from the beginning to be able to take a gold advantage and get their scaling characters into a position where they can carry a game. And right there, how many times do you see Jinx get focused? You see, a Silas get focused, and then Gangplank just does whatever he wants inside of a fight. You hit a barrel and you win. Like, the fight is just completely over. So much so that by the end, it didn't even need a barrel. You just pressed that Prowler's Claw on somebody, and it killed two people, because it killed off, first off, I think it was the Seraphine that it killed, but it also killed you by aging you 100 years, because your voice went so raspy, I think you could have actually sanded it at some point.
I wasn't ready for it. I had no breath in my lungs, and I was just like, what happened, man? My butt, that was dirty, dude. Oh, God. That was some filthy stuff. I could feel Niles blushing after seeing a performance like that, because goodness gracious, my bud popped off with the Gangplank. Ivano filled his role pretty well, even though it was a rough start for him. Frost Forest, of course, always putting in the work. Winthrop University, it was a great win for them, but I do feel like it's a morale victory for Wildcard Developmental. As we said, they were able to stop that win streak. It is now 11-1 for Winthrop University. Well, now 12-1. Well, the win streak was stopped at 11, so 11-1 is where they were able to stop that win streak. They put on a very good fight against Winthrop University. If this is your developmental squad, even all things considered, they put a good showing for what they brought against Winthrop University.
Biggest thing is that Last Resistance inside of this group 2-0'd University of California, San Diego. And so while the third spot I think is difficult to climb to now when it comes to playoffs for Wildcard Developmental, it's not impossible because, of course, San Diego dropping that and them not, and of course, Wildcard getting a win does close the gap at least a little bit on that regard. And so in the final week, they have to play up against the Dragons, which is another team that's kind of competing for one of these playoff spots, but they have the ability to change their fate, which is kind of nice. But it's still difficult, but that win, I think you're right. I think it is a pretty big, boisterous win to be able to say that they were the only team inside of the group to take a win against Winthrop. Winthrop is breathing a sigh of relief because obviously I don't think they were in threat of losing the series, but like losing a game like that has to put you on edge, especially when, again, you went undefeated and you're trying to secure that number one seed guarantee, able to do it the last possible second so they can breathe easy in the final week pretty effectively. And now Wildcard, of course, on the chopping block for the final week. Even though having a performance like this should be a boon to your confidence, you still have to be very ready to win the series next week against another big competitor.
All right, so that's going to do it for the broadcast. Hats off to Wildcard for the performance they were able to bring to make this a series. And of course, Winthrop for the dub that they got here today to continue at least being undefeated in series alone and secure that first seed for playoffs contention. So got one more week for the UPL, so you're not going to want to miss out next week. But for now, in the casting desk, my name is Eric Desrix-Beltran. Joining me, the no-nonsense Dean Rebel Fox Merrick. I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time in Unified Premier League.